the Sooners are down 14 points to Carolina in the first ever meeting. Hawkins, freshman, takes it in the pocket, gets in as he throws it into coverage again, and picked up again at the 40 of Carolina down the near sideline. That's Eman Worry towards the end zone. Are you kidding me? Touchdown Carolina. Touchdown Nick Eman Worry.
This is 365 Sports.
High throw it, picked off. Jahdae Barrett taking it all the way back.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
They're sharp. They drop 8 into coverage. Touchdown, Louisville! Ja'Cory Brooks!
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Oh, another pick. This one's got space. And Oklahoma is out of bounds at the 2 with Danny Stutzman. What a read by the linebacker.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Muse is knocked down. Jacob Parrish is feeling it.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And good afternoon. If you are in the, I don't know how far out this reaches, but I cannot explain the kind of wind we've had in Central Texas. I know in West Texas that's the way you live. In other places, it is ferocious. Garrett said there were power outages earlier today. Mine flickered for about a half a second. I live off the dam in Waco, and I mean, you can't. It's just nothing but dust that is blowing with the massive winds that have hit this area and continue even at this particular time.
If you would like to know, one of the reasons I have chosen not to ever really visit or live in West Texas, it's because of weather like this. I don't care for wind and dust.
Yeah, it's not good for the golf game. I know that, but it is amazing. And just wanted to mention that to bring a little locality of where we are and what we have experienced really since earlier this morning. So, the ACC, Clemson, and Florida State. Everything's good, right, Paul?
That's all. It's like nothing ever happened.
So here we are. Pete Thamel, Andrea Adelson, also a couple of other notes. The ACC Board of Directors voted to agree changes in the financial distribution, the model buyout clarity for the league that marks a key step in the lawsuits brought on by Clemson and FSU now being dropped. This is the first of 3 expected steps today. Also, the ACC had their announcement too, but here's Andrea Adelson with what she reported. The ACC, FSU, and also Clemson are expected to drop by $18 million their exit fees each year through 2029, 2030, and after that, exit fees drop to $75 million, and exiting teams. This is the key here, the grant of rights key. The exit fees can be money. It's going to be money, but the grant of rights, the media rights that teams have for their broadcast moving forward, even if they leave the ACC, if they pay the various exit fee, they now will continue to own their own media rights.
So they convinced the ACC of that particular point, in that if we are not in the league, you don't own our rights. We have the grant of rights as long as we're in the league. So if we leave, we take the rights with us. And so they won on that in this. And everybody gets what they want for now. The ACC, this is a temporary situation, and they have to work to try to make it better to keep together 5-6 years from now when that exit fee drops to $75 million, which is about par for the course of the other exit fees of everybody else, that's moved conferences. That about stays with that. So, Florida State and Clemson can figure out what their plans are for the future and set up different things, and the ACC can stay intact, and that's what's best for everybody right now. But in 2030, all bets are off.
So does this mean Florida State will stop whining like little bitches now?
I hope so.
I hope so too. But yeah, I think I guess part of this would be the whole dropping of price to $75 million after 2030, right? So in theory, could they leave in 2 years and pay $150 million or whatever it would be?
Whatever that number would be,
you could. So I guess that'll be a dream for some. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of people I saw disappointed yesterday. There's a lot of details that weren't out, and we knew that those would come, and so it's good to have those today to be able to parse through and understand fully what's actually going on here. But yeah, it's from all indications, now that we have more details, a great day for Florida State and Clemson, and potentially Miami and North Carolina as well. The fact that you've got a date that's in the foreseeable future, that's an unofficial exit date of sorts now, 5 years, and you can pretty much do what you want to do, I think is definitely going to make that time fly by a little better. And there were people, I saw plenty of them disappointed yesterday, that felt like they had been led to believe that this was like imminent and that they were leaving. And it was just a matter of like, well, just settle and then we're in the Big Ten. And it wasn't that simple, but it's a lot simpler now today with all the information that's been filled in. So there is a path. It's just a path that's probably going to take you about 5 years to get to. And it's not a path for everybody. It's a path for probably a handful of schools in terms of going to a couple of the leagues there in the Big Ten and the SEC. And as far as the rest of them, I mean, we'll have those conversations. The Big 12 will obviously, be involved to some extent. But, yeah, this seems like a banner day for the schools that wanted more, that felt that they were owed more. I think there's a slippery slope when you're talking about TV ratings, and those are already pretty much built in. I mean, sure, you're going to have an example like SMU, whose TV ratings the past couple years are going to be well more than they ever were before, part of because of who they played and part of because of the games they played in. But for a deck that's already stacked, it is now stacked more when you've got, like, the teams that automatically have the best TV ratings already pretty much are going to benefit anyways. And so,
and adding Notre Dame into the mix.
Then you add Notre Dame and the fact that you get to schedule Notre Dame if you're those big schools more often because they want to play Clemson more and they want to play Florida State more and they want to play Miami more. It feels like all of the, kind of like in this country, the rich are just patting each other on the back and feeding off of each other to great riches. And so, yeah, those schools that are already the biggest with the biggest TV ratings are going to benefit, and you win even more so. So that sets up perfectly for the schools that were barking. And so, yeah, it's a great day for them. I think for the ACC, I've seen a lot of the fans of other schools kind of coming to grips with it. I think if you're a fan of the ACC who's not a fan of one of those schools, you do have 5 years. I mean, I think you basically have a countdown clock. And look, I'll say this. I saw, like, immediately as soon as this came out, all right, so Georgia Tech's doing this, and then Florida State's going here. And I know that's the fun of this whole thing, but I don't know what 5 years from now looks like, guys. Yeah. I'll be honest with you, in college sports. So whatever's happening today, I don't know that it's going to be exactly that 5 years from now or even 4 years from now. But, that's a time period you can now circle rather than 2036 and say, all right, there's the end of the road potentially, not only for those schools that have made their once known and have now gotten those once in return, but for everybody, it's kind of a ticking clock now of like, all right, let's see what these next 5 years hold. And then after that, the ACC might not even exist anymore. They might be a version of the Pac where it's like Boston College and Pitt, and then it's 10 other schools that have been called up, so to speak. We don't know. That's stuff we'll figure out over time, but definitely feel like with more details, ACC kind of sort of got a win in a way. They didn't lose necessarily, but definitely feels like FSU, Clemson were the huge winners here.
Well, they have some time,
yeah.
and of course we'll see. Here's one of the keys to 29 and 2030. The major shift, the next major shift in the college athletics industry will come during 2030 and 2032, at least expected. The litany of events could trigger sweeping changes in the college sports landscape as if we haven't seen that in the last few years. During those years, the Big 12 and the Big 10 TV contracts will end. The NCAA men's basketball tournament and college football playoff television deals will also end if they're not extended prior to that. The sport will also be 5 years into the athlete revenue sharing, the concept that they're still trying to figure that out in college sports. And many expect to be more formally divided, the richer schools from all the rest. a long-discussed splintering among college football subdivisions of 134 schools that right now is the FBS. So that is why the key, that date, that calendar of 29 and 30 also is the start of when you could have some massive changes or even more, consolidation in some particular ways.
I remember vividly our guy Bob Thompson saying that word in particular multiple times and us not really understanding what exactly that meant. And now we see exactly what it meant. It's all the biggest schools ganging up together is basically what the consolidation is.
Which they're doing in a way now, but then that allows an open door of a lot of things to then be approved.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of the gist he was getting at. And sometimes I feel like he was afraid to outright say that because of the audience he was talking to. Mm-hmm. I feel like he felt like he was talking to Big 12 fans, so even though we have more than just Big 12 fans, but I sometimes felt like it was not a matter of being as brutally honest in what consolidation meant because of the fact that would devastate like most of the people that were listening at that time. But that's kind of the gist I always felt like what that meant was consolidation means that's paring down. So we're not quite there, but you can see the writing on the wall of how we'd get there pretty easily. I mean, the ACC, for example, now has 5 years to see what happens and figure out how all this works and whether it's a disaster or whether it's great. I don't know. We'll see on that. And then, perhaps that is the exit door, and then the ACC is a different beast. Like, that's all to be found out over the next 5 years. But, yeah, I definitely feel like we're firmly in consolidation. And it also ties into what we're talking about with the schools paying players now. And I don't remember what report it was yesterday, but the talk about how there's going to be some schools that just say a couple of years into this thing of like, we can't do this anymore. Like, this isn't sustainable. We can't keep fundraising like this. We can't afford to keep doing this. On second thought, we're out. And that in itself will also lead to more consolidation. So I just remember that word from Bob Thompson always hanging in the air a little bit and kind of understanding, but not quite fully understanding what he was getting at. And I think we see it clear as day on a day like today where it's not consolidation yet, but it's setting the stage for there to be more of it for sure.
All right, Drew Weatherford. Paul, who is he?
He's a former, very mediocre at best
FSU Board of Trustee, right? But he has is he the one that has private equity or something like that?
Yeah, he's with Redbird Capital. So he's doing well.
Yeah, we made it clear, Florida State, that we were willing to seek a new home if something drastically didn't change. But the good news is that things have drastically changed for our benefit. I think it's a really good outcome, great outcome for everybody involved. What they wanted to change was, and they're already getting a little bit of this anyway, is that those who bring in the bigger eyeballs and have the most success will get more of a piece of the pie, which is the ACC television contract with ESPN. There's also the ACC network. Now, last year for Florida State, that didn't work out as well because they sucked. They weren't very good, and they've been good, and they have been, of course, part of carrying the conference, like Clemson, Miami, possibly others. But there were some other football schools that started playing well last year. But they kind of got what they wanted. It's very simple, very not selfish, if you could call it that year. But the good news is that things have drastically changed for our benefit, which means you don't have the lawsuit anymore. And now you move forward. You're going to see a lot of these, oh, my God, Wake Forest is going to join the Big 12. Just take a deep breath. Could that at some point, who knows who might raid one another, but that's so far down the line. But this is like meth for some who want constant realignment change in college football.
Again, they're fine right now. I mean, there's nothing to do right now. What I think will be the thing is for 5 years, what's the plan and to see how it goes. The way the ACC keeps, honestly, it's weird to say this, but the way the ACC can keep together and keep their big brand schools is that if other schools are actually good. And who knows if that can even happen. But Clemson is going to be the head and shoulders above everybody team going into the year. This year, SMU is still going to be back because they've got a lot of guys. But can Miami do it again? Is Carson Beck going to help them? Can a team like Pitt take another step forward? Can Syracuse keep doing it? That's what's going to be important for them to increase their value. Otherwise, I mean, they've just given everybody who wants out in 5 years what the formula is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wins in that there's not a lawsuit anymore to have to worry about. Nobody's having to pay into that was paying into that, which wasn't everybody. But, I mean, I'm sure, Clemson and Florida State's lawyers are glad to stand – or the ones paying the lawyers are glad to stand down and put their pocketbooks away for a little while. And so there is that where I do feel like everybody wins. But, yeah, make no mistake about it. I mean, there's plenty of people that will rush to tell you that revenue sharing and doing it lopsided is not an exact science. And, in fact, it can be one that creates cracks that are irreparable in your conference potentially. And that's the thought process, I think, for some, is that this is just the inevitable beginning of the end because this won't work. Or even if it does work, in 5 years those teams all leave, and then you're left with what? You're left with a bunch of teams who hopefully competed. Hopefully, on the one side you see, well, this should spur people to invest more because now you get paid more for winning. You would think they were already doing that to some extent, but I guess, the feeling is some were just kind of cashing checks or at least not putting up as much on a yearly basis as the Seminoles or the Hurricanes or whoever were. So you do hope it makes for a more competitive league and more investment over the next 5 years. But, it'll be very interesting to see how everybody reacts to this. I mean, does Wake Forest suddenly get like more people on board like, man, we really got to go all in now? Or do you go, well, we're screwed. Like, what are we pouring money into? Like, we're never going to get huge TV ratings, so we don't benefit from that. We're never going to win the conference, so we don't benefit. Like, I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting, like I said, to kind of just see how all this sort of matriculates around and works for these first couple of years at least, and how those shares are doled out and who benefits from them and who doesn't. Like, there's a lot of questions still, but we did get big ones answered today just in terms of the decision itself to settle and what that all looks like. And again, it looks like a big giant W for Florida State and Clemson, and potentially that would also mean North Carolina and Miami. And for the rest of the schools, I think it's a big question mark, although you do have 5 years. On paper, you got 5 years of stability, which you didn't really know what you had before. You probably hoped it was like more like 11 years of stability because it was all the way to 2036, but I think there was always the feeling floating around there this would be settled at some point or another, and not quite last until then. So, the clock's ticking, I guess, in a way, but at the same time, you don't have to rush into any decision-making because it's still 5 years. And that doesn't sound like a long time, and I know for people who live long enough, years just peel off the calendar like it's just waking up on a daily basis. But that's still 5 years. And if we look back at just 5 years prior to today, and we said, hey, guess what happens in the next 5 years? We would have lost our minds and be like, that is not all happening in the next 5 years. So what happens in these next 5 years with the House settlement and all of those? Like, who knows where we are? But we do have a much clearer potential end date for the ACC as we know it.
John Wilner, who covered forever the Pac-12 and schools out on the western side of America, Cal and Stanford don't reach full share revenue status in the ACC until 2 years after the exit penalties drop below $100 million. Figured that was worth mentioning.
Yeah, that's not great, Bob. It's not ideal. So
let me ask you guys this. This is a question that, again, sometimes when my brain thinks, what's to keep any of those teams from saying, screw it, we'll do $175 million right now? That's nothing compared. There's nowhere to go.
That's it.
There's nowhere to go.
That's like nobody's, like, look, if Florida State called up the SEC right now and said, hey, it's going to be $175 million, what do you guys think? They'd be like, let's wait.
I mean, I think, I would get doing that, but that's a lot of money, man.
Yeah.
Even for, like, Florida State or whoever, that's a lot of damn money, $175 million. Like, wouldn't you, especially if you just got what you wanted and you stand to benefit the most from it, I mean, wouldn't you rather spend the money you have and not burn it? I mean, because then all of a sudden you're in a $175 million hole just like that you now are paying.
Yeah, and you're going to get maybe, we're looking at hypothetical here, which is it's not always a great thing, but you're going to get an extra $20-25 million a year. You may not even get a full share. It will take you a long time to make up the difference, even if you're a part of a larger conference, at least for the next 5 years.
I mean, I get people want to, turn around and be in the SEC tomorrow, but there is something to be said for patience, and I think you're much better off in saving $175 million or whatever the actual price would be, and just taking advantage of the system that you proposed and you fought for and you sued over and you got now. So now that you got it, you want to turn around and be like, let's pay $175 million to get out of here. I think that'd be stupid.
Yeah, thank you for the settlement. We're leaving.
And also, here's the thing. Use these 5 years to make sure that extra money you're getting makes you good.
Well, that's the thing.
And so that when you get to the 5 years, you don't have to just be like, hey, you remember 1999? Like, you don't have to do that. You can say, like, hey, people watch us on TV every week. We're winning games. We're a benefit to whatever conference we're going to be in. Line up and tell us which one you want us to go to.
Yeah, I'd say you build a war chest. You don't empty it.
Exactly.
That's when you just got what you wanted. So, yeah, you've got 5 years in theory, and you make as much money and win as many games as you possibly can. If you do the latter, then there will be more of the former, and then you build that up. And then when the time comes and whoever's ready to ring your telephone and say, come on down, Johnny, then you do it then. But, yeah, I don't know why you'd rush to pay tens of millions of dollars to get out like a year too early when you can make whatever, I haven't tabulated all of the, like, if they make the playoff and if they do this and if they do that, like, but I know it's a lot of money they can make. So, yeah, you just fought. This is what you fought for. So you got it. So I think it would be bizarre to turn around and go, all right, we got what we wanted. Now let's leave that and go pay $175 million to get out of this situation that we fought for. I think you take full advantage of getting what you wanted. You go on a 5-year spree of winning as much as possible and grabbing every penny that you can, and you see how college sports works with whatever, like, is House going to be in play or is it not? Like, but with that and with just all the other things kind of swarming right now, you let that figure itself out, and then you're fully ready to just walk out the door whenever the time actually comes, and no sweat off your back, as opposed to right now where I think if you're the SEC and you're the Big Ten, like, you're probably also loving the fact that you got 5 years to get ready for potentially onboarding some more schools.
Yeah, let the dirt settle, or let the foundation settle of what will start here soon, the House agreement, and know a little bit more, a couple of more years, 5 years more of what NIL is. And, of course, there was a congressional hearing on that, I think congressional hearing today. Amanda Kristovich of Front Office Sports will join us today at 3:40. How about this? Jim Grobe coached at Wake Forest. He was an interim coach in 2016 at Baylor. He's going to join us. He was part of the College Football Playoff Committee for the last 3 years. Speaking of that, Mack Rhoades, Baylor's Director of Athletics, is now the chairman of the College Football Playoff Committee. Also, you see other names involved. There's Damon Evans, Ivan Maisel, who is a longtime writer, Sports Illustrated, etc. Chris Massaro, Wesley Walls, also new committee members as they churn out names, including Jim Grobe. Now, I sent Mack Rhoades a text. I went, you're now on top of the college football playoff world. And he sent back a text, and I think he's like, I think this is good. Is there anybody that has been the college football playoff chairman who we have not taken aim at?
No. Why would you want this job, Mac? Why do you want it? It's awful. It's thankless. You're gonna want, and here's the thing. I know Mac is a really smart guy. I know he is. I know that he does not want to go out there and give a dumb answer to a reasonable question. But guess what? It's going to happen.
Well,
because
there's confusion.
Because he's going to walk out there and they're going to ask him a question and be like, why Mississippi State over NC State at 12? And then he's going to have to say, like the party line of it.
That's for Brett Daniels to prep him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but here's the thing. And look, Brett is some of the best in the business. The problem is that the only answer to these questions are, A, this is what we think this week, and these 5 television shows I'm doing means 0 things.
All right, Paul, you brought this up in a text. Craig, you were a part of it. Remember, we had Mack in, about a month ago, and discussed his time as a college football playoff committee member. And one of the things that I asked him about was, why not more transparency? And he asked a return question about, what do you mean by that? I don't know if that means that they can get any more transparent. I don't think they will. They probably don't need to. As far as they're concerned, I think they do. Whatever that means, I don't know. But now he is the face who will answer the questions when they're asked about various things when it comes to the weekly standings during the season.
Well, to be fair, if the person asking the question doesn't even really know what they're asking, then it's hard for the person to answer. So since you didn't really know what you were asking, I don't know how you're supposed to answer it. But, I mean, I think I got what you were going for with that. But, yeah, what transparency? Like, what more can they show us? Are they going to show us like, I think you propose, like, being inside their meeting room or something. Like, we don't want to go that far into it.
You can't do that.
So there's nothing else really you can do. I think the problem.
I think there should be cameras. At least let us see if the human beings are meeting or not. I'm not being frivolous. I flip it. I just think that there should be more transparency. I said that before you started talking. I don't know what that means. Maybe there is something they could do differently.
My thing would be show us the vote at the end. Like, just show us who voted how.
Yeah, I don't care about seeing them sit in a room. Like,
No. But I want you to release, like, who voted how. You know, it's the same reason I want to know who pays for every single senator and representative, like, where their money comes from. Mm-hmm. I want to know exactly why. Like, so I want to know, because if there's a narrative, if FSU 2023 happens again, I want to be able to see why that happened.
Yeah, I mean, for that, I don't want a reality show crap.
No.
We don't need any more attention on these people than they already get, and there's more than enough playoff show as is. I mean, I'd actually be for less playoff show.
Well, no, then I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm asking for more transparency, and yet again, I hope they don't have a meeting until, like, there's 2 weeks left in the season.
I'd like to have them do the show with, like, 2 weeks remaining in the regular season or something like that, and then do it through championship weekend or whatever, but I think for Mack, that's an incredible honor. I think that's a very cool thing to have on your resume. It's a great opportunity to be in a very unique position of
it's a hell of a deal.
Being the face of the playoff committee. And so, congrats to him. And he's done a lot of cool stuff as athletic director at Baylor, and this is definitely amongst the cool things that he's done, and it's not bad for them to have, as well as the Big 12, some representation. I don't think that it necessarily makes a huge difference in the long run. They're not going to get 3 teams in versus if he wasn't and they'd only get 1 or 2. But I don't think it hurts at all to have somebody at least fighting the fight for you that knows you a little bit better than the others. So I think that's definitely a feather in the cap for the league to have a known voice like that at the top of the totem pole of the college football playoff committee. And just the experience for him, I think it's a really cool opportunity. So I'm sure he's thrilled, also probably nervous, anxious about it. But overall, I bet he's excited, and I'll look forward to when we get to talk to him about it.
Yeah, when I saw that, I had the double take. I was like, oh, cool, because he's been on it 1 year. And, again, they rotate 3-year terms. He'd get it. Kirby Hocutt, Texas Tech. Who was the guy at Arkansas that was one of the very first of the college
Mr.
football?
Game Control. What was that dude's name? Hunt or something, right?
No, that's Urasek.
Not Urasek.
Yeah. The Arkansas AD, the first one. The poor guy.
Jeff Long.
Jeff Long. Yeah, he was a part of it. And so, all right.
Mr. Game Control. Hey, we knew this was rigged the moment he started speaking, talking about game control. And then he started talking about, what was the other one? The time, body clocks.
Yeah.
You go back and watch those, the load of BS they spewed in those early playoff shows, body clocks and game control, like, well, they're going 2 time zones, and so their win's not the same as the win here because they were more tired, and it's like, what are you talking about? I mean, that was from the outset. They just walked right into the deep water of like, what is going on, and what are y'all using to make decisions here? And then it's been sort of like that ever since. But each year's got their different little themes of what their little things are. So that year it was body clocks and game control, which we've never heard about since then, mind you. We never hear that anymore. We heard it that year that Jeff Long was in charge.
Yeah, no, you're right. Jeff Long for 2 years. And then Kirby Hocutt, he was there as the chairman for 2 years. Rob Mullins for a couple of years. Gary Bartow, Iowa, for a couple of years. Abu Corrigan, he was there for a couple of years. And the chairman in the last year, Ward Manuel from Michigan. And now Mack Rhoades at Baylor.
I wouldn't want to be the guy that's answering the ESPN questions like right after the release, though, on those weekly shows.
Well, he's it.
But that's what he'll have to do. I mean, that would be the part of the job I wouldn't really enjoy because I feel like it's oftentimes just talking in circles and you don't really explain it the way the fans want to hear you explain it. So he'll be that guy for the next couple of years, I guess. But that's the part of the job I would not want to do, is do the dumb Q&A right after you release the rankings that doesn't clear really anything up and just makes people even more pissed off than they already were.
And for 5 weeks of the 6, it means nothing.
And
it's
for
just,
the most part, yeah.
It's just drivel.
I will have, listen, we have prepped him for these tough questions over the years with having him on the show. What used to be 40 times a year, and then last year 2 or 3, and now we had him on earlier this year. But good. It's good. It's a huge deal. He's been a part of now that big part of the committee with Brett Yormark in the Big 12 when they were going through a lot of their transition, adding, losing, and trying to stay alive. So he has climbed that ladder with a lot of different titles as the chairman of the College Football Playoff Committee. And as Paxton said, he doesn't even like ADs being a part of the committee because you have to recuse yourself anyway if your team. And Mack hopes his team is a part of that conversation, as any AD would otherwise. Was today, back to the ACC, and Amanda Kristovich will join us in 10 minutes. Was today a good day? I'm not talking Clemson and Florida State, not even really Miami or possibly North Carolina.
Or Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech, Wake Forest.
No. I'm saying Georgia Tech is probably more in that group that you're referring to than they are the group you're about to refer to.
Okay, of the ACC, there's 17 teams. What was today like for some of those that aren't the ones near the top of the food chain?
A lot of coping. I've seen a lot of that.
Yeah,
today.
I mean, it's just this is the reality they have to deal with. Craig says it all the time. The only way that you can fix your situation is to win. The only way you can fix your situation is to win.
The only thing I say that's a caveat to that is to have some Cody Campbell landman hit $1 billion deal that all of a sudden he's like, I want to give back to my old team. Like outside of that, and even that doesn't guarantee anything, as we've seen with Tech. But outside of that, the only thing you can do is win. That's the only way to raise like the TV ratings to get the money, or the TV ratings to get the television deal, or just anything you name. It is solved like universally by one thing, and that is winning. Yes, Paul, that's what I usually say. Yeah,
exactly. And look, you can have all the money in the world, but if you spend it on something that doesn't matter, you don't know how to funnel it the right way, then it doesn't matter that you have a bunch of money.
Yeah,
I mean,
all right.
There's plenty of rich idiots out there.
Yeah, if you go spend on the wrong players, then you're not going to win anything, but you spend a lot of money.
If you're one in the ACC that doesn't have that upper level feel to you, go earn it. Just like the Big 12, if they ever want to earn something more than just who they are, which at times is pretty good and at times it's not, go win. Win the games head-to-head against those teams that usually get the advantage in the rankings and also in the playoffs.
Arizona State is a great story, but the league needed them to beat Texas and to win a playoff game. That's what the league really needed. That's what Arizona State needed. It was as best as you can get as far as perception and people won over and things like that, admiration for your program. They did as good of a job as you can possibly do without actually winning said game. So they ended on a high note regardless, but in order for the people that have the money to pay attention and to dole it out the way you want them to, they needed Arizona State to win that game and go deeper. As to your question, I think if you're Stanford and Cal, you were like, what is going on? Like, what? I mean, they're honestly, they're probably figuring out if they're going back home to the West Coast in the future, depending on what happens here. I don't know that you're going to be ideally traveling to Boston and Raleigh and Syracuse, New York, without some trips to Chapel Hill or to Clemson, South Carolina, or to Miami mixed in. I don't know if that's nearly as attractive to go all the way across the country if you don't have those trips to also mix in with those other ones. So I think if you're them, you're probably going, we got some things to think over. I think if you are the other schools that are just out east, like I know Big 12 fans have been obsessed with Louisville for like a decade now because they were going to join at one point in time, got voted down. So there's a total obsession with them. I mean, they're going to be available potentially. I think if you're them, you feel like you're good that you have a landing spot. But I think there'd be others that are certainly like, if you're Wake Forest, I don't think you have any. You're hoping like North Carolina politics will come into play again. This is 5 years from now. Maybe if somebody cuts a $175 million check, it's like 2 years from now. That just seems like it would be a really huge waste of money, however. But, yeah, if you're Pitt or I think I mentioned Syracuse or a school like that that's not just automatically associated with something else, like the Pac schools would be to the Pac potentially, or like Louisville to the Big 12. I mean, some of those would be attractive for the Big 12. Some of those, I'm sure. I mean, what would the
by
ACC
the way,
ideally?
Some of the Big 12 teams will be very attractive if the ACC continues.
With what money, though? That's the thing.
I'm
yeah,
just saying
like
that, yeah.
I mean, that's and the thing is too is like the Big 12's got a TV deal that comes up right at that same time.
Yeah,
so are they
exactly.
even making more money, or like? Here's the part like when people start going so far ahead of time, it's like, so you're going to guarantee me here that everybody's making like an extra $20 million than they're already making now, so that there's no offset, and if you onboard like 4 teams, or is there a clause that they're going to get paid more if like onboard these more teams, or are you just creating a giant league of average? Like that's my thing. Like, cool, you got 24 teams, you're all the same, nobody's unique, and you all make like average money. Who cares, right? So that's where I'm not like keen on just add to add. They've got to make sense and they've got to bring something to the table. And I don't think everybody in that league or everybody in every league automatically does that. So, yeah, I think if you're those schools that maybe you're in that category of you don't just immediately bring to mind something to the table, then, you know, this is a day where you're probably going, we need to start really thinking about what the future holds for us.
Amanda Kristovich of Front Office Sports, she was on this story, of course, yesterday, and it's been out there. It's simmering. And she's going to join us on that. Plus, there was a hearing when it comes to the NIL, and I don't know if that's ever going to produce anything. Like even she said, she doesn't know if those who are listening are really listening to what they're asking the questions for. And we'll get into that with Amanda. Jim Grobe at 4 o'clock. We'll also have the Utah schedule today, looking and breaking down Utah's 2025 football schedule. Hall of Famer John McClain, the top 5 off the radar. And this is 365 Sports.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and you know, I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
It's Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $15,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable value? Drive home a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995, or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, Call Tradesman Services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Amanda Kristovich with us, Front Office Sports. She's dealing with what's going on with the NIL, the hearings, and also yesterday the ACC story that completed today. Let's start with the ACC. And, hey, by the way, good to see you. Thank you very much for your time. I know you've had a busy day. Was today a good day for the ACC or not?
I think it was about as good of a day as the ACC could have hoped for at this point. The settlement that the conference has reached with FSU and Clemson solidifies its existence, I would argue, until at least 2030, which is, looking a lot better for them than what their future, could have held, let's say, a little over a year ago now. I was on a beach in Mexico when FSU filed their first lawsuit in December of 2023. So I'm really, at the very least, happy that they settled on a day I was actually in the office. But yeah, I think it's a good day for them. I mean, look, they're not going to have as high of exit fees going forward as they, did in their original contracts. But ultimately, they're keeping their conference together for now. And also, I would argue that they're showing innovation in this new television ratings revenue incentives idea that the conference honestly has not shown, in my opinion, compared to some of the other conferences on their level. So I think that it's a step in the right direction for sure.
Does this maybe buoy the hopes of some of the other teams in that, okay, if we commit to making football better, which is something the ACC, and this is, look, I went to Florida State, I went to an ACC school, so I know that the contention has always been that they've always doubled down on basketball and never have on football. And I think at the conference level, they maybe have had that directive, but each individual school maybe hasn't as much. This maybe spur them along for the Pitts and Syracuses and Boston Colleges and Wake Forest of the world to make sure that football can be consistent as well as they can?
Oh, 100%. I mean, look, all of these new revenue incentives, I mean, the success initiatives that are specifically tied to, moving forward in the college football playoff actually kind of remind me of the NCAA's March Madness unit system that actually for the first time this year, the women's tournament is going to have units too. So you get a prize pot every time you advance. And the ACC has promised that individual schools will get cuts of that money if they play well in the CFP. Same with television viewership. I mean, look, I love basketball. I love covering March Madness. It's my favorite time of year personally, but the television ratings for football just don't compare. The NFL is the most powerful ratings draw in the country, and college football is a close second. So, both from a direct and indirect standpoint, growing not just the strength of your football program, but the audience and the fan base. There are now direct revenue incentives for ACC members to do that, and they're open to everyone. It's not like FSU and Clemson are the only ones who get to participate in this. It's the whole league.
Amanda, if you would have gone back in a time machine 5 years ago, 2020, I don't think anybody could have predicted what 2025 was going to look like with college sports. So everybody's now playing all right, so this is what's going to happen next. What does 5 years from now look like in college sports when all of this can actually start potentially snowballing?
I think at least from a conference standpoint, because I could approach that question in a number of ways,
Sure.
right? We could talk about athletes as employees, but let's stick to the conference realignment standpoint. Let's see, it's 2025. So in 2030, which is when the ACC's exit fees dwindle down to $75 million. They start at $165 million, and they're decreasing every year between now and 2030. By then, $75 million is a much easier number to leave the conference. It's still way higher than most exit fees that I'm aware of. But that is going to give schools in the ACC an opportunity when media rights contracts come due for other leagues, the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, the college football playoff, and men's March Madness, women's March Madness, all those TV contracts are going to be up for renewal between 2030 and 2031, 32, 33. So that's going to be the next window when we're going to see potentially another major conference realignment shift or consolidation. I don't think we're going to see one before then. Folks talk about the ACC Big East merger concept, right? I wrote about that. Folks talk about a super league. They forget you have to unwind like 6 contracts with all of the major media partners in existence in this country in order to do that. So I think in 5 years, that's when we're going to see the start of the next era of conference realignment.
Yeah, I asked this question earlier. Let's say somebody gets frisky and wants to leave in 2 or 3 years because they don't think the money's a big deal, which it is money. You got to write a check. There's nowhere to go right now, Amanda. There's no openings anywhere else. And even if a conference would like a Clemson or a Florida, if they did, why change right now when they got a pretty good thing going?
Well, I would imagine, and this is just my own personal assumption. I don't have, any insider information on this, but I do believe that one could surmise that FSU and or Clemson wouldn't have been as amenable to a settlement if they thought they might get an offer from, the SEC or the Big Ten. And those were the conferences that they would have wanted to go to. And FSU has been, we all know that they've been eyeing the SEC, and the SEC has not been interested. It's like dating. You can't, if one party doesn't want to go on the date isn't going to happen. So I think that part of the reason there was a settlement in the first place is because these schools had nowhere else to go, and they're thinking, okay, well, maybe we can start working on, or coming up with a $75 million pot of gold that we can keep behind our desks for 2030, when those other leagues contracts, media rights contracts come due, we can come up with we'll get an invitation, we'll get a first date, we'll get an offer to go to a new conference.
Amanda, do you think that this is also, though, a door opening for other conferences to take this model, like the Big Ten, and for them to maybe in 5 years trim the herd? I mean, to say, you know what, Rutgers, Vanderbilt, you guys, you're not helping us anymore. It's not a super league, but let's redistribute where you guys are.
100%. I 100% think that this is going to be a model, an incentive model going forward that other conferences are going to look to potentially emulate. I mean, look, like I said, the ACC has not necessarily been known to be the most innovative over the past few years. There's value in stability, right? But over, between 2021 and now, in this most recent round of realignment, if you aren't thinking outside the box, if you aren't thinking of adding, USC and UCLA to the Big Ten, which, most people could not have even fathomed 5 years ago, then you're going to lose. So I absolutely think that other conferences, especially the other power conferences, are going to consider a model like the TV viewership, or like, more let's say personalized revenue incentives for CFP prowess. But I guess the question I have about that is, from a legal perspective, right? What do the contracts in those leagues say, and how much wiggle room do these leagues have in terms of being able to come to the university president sitting down and actually voting and coming to an agreement that couldn't be challenged in court by a Rutgers or Maryland, right? To say, now we're not going to get as much money. You'd have to look at the bylaws, the grant, the potentially grant of rights, and just make sure that from a legal perspective, you're not opening up yourself up to another lawsuit from one of your existing members that, like, I don't really think you can kick out. But obviously all disputes in college sports are being settled in court right now. So I think that would be the number one question I have about whether or not other leagues can implement this.
So was anything accomplished today on Capitol Hill?
Is it never accomplished on Capitol Hill? No, I'll keep my politics out of it. I think that's pretty bipartisan, though, wouldn't you say?
Yep.
No, nothing was accomplished. I think the only thing that was accomplished was, a few Congress people on both sides of the aisle got, maybe a nice clip or a nice soundbite that they could use on their social media. The hearing was about NIL. And when you want to talk about what Congress needs to do, or what the NCAA wants Congress to do, to fix quote unquote college sports, NIL honestly doesn't have a lot to do with it. I felt like I was listening to a hearing that, the same things were being said that were said 5 years ago. There was no actual concrete legislation that was discussed in this hearing. And I think the hearing also just showed what I think, my reporting has suggested over the last month or so, which, by the way, contradicts my reporting from November. I couldn't have guessed that even though there was a red wave and the Republicans control both houses of Congress and the White House, I don't think they're going to be able to get a major piece of college sports legislation passed, at least a piece of legislation that does anything significant, like an antitrust exemption or saying athletes aren't employees. Democrats are not going to go for that. Obviously, this was a House hearing, not a Senate hearing, but I've heard that Republicans in the Senate, some of them are not going to go for an antitrust exemption for college athletes either. I'm actually a lot more interested in the hearing that is now been scheduled for next Tuesday, also a House hearing, House Judiciary, which is going to be specifically about antitrust. Again, is anything going to be accomplished? No, but I think we'll get, at least hopefully, a bit of a clearer sense of where lawmakers stand on the question of giving the NCAA this safe harbor that they have spent millions of dollars begging for in Congress and just haven't gotten.
Can you find out at some point, I'm not giving you a homework assignment, but how much money did Clemson, Florida State, and the ACC spend on legal fees to get to this point?
Ooh, that's a great question. Because they're settling, I do not believe that information is going to be public.
Okay.
It depends on the law. I'd have to look up the law firms. I'd have to call some of my friends who are smarter than I am and went to law school and do this stuff just like I do, but they make a lot more money than me, to see what the firms it's like the hourly attorney's fees. If you're talking about like a big white shoe law firm, some of the firms that the NCAA uses, they could charge up to $1,000 an hour just for an associate, not just a partner. So they made a lot. You're joking around, but like I'm thinking, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 8 figures.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised either. I asked that question because I don't know anything about the legal system and the cost or whatever. I know it's not free. You had a quote from Craig Bowl, a statement. His office is like a mile and a half from where we are here in Waco at the AFCA. What was his reaction when you contacted, or when you asked for any kind of a response to today's hearings?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, I really got what the statement said, which is that, they thought it was a good start. Obviously, there was a power conference football coach on the panel, which I think was a win for them, a win for the AFCA and their lobbying efforts. They got into the lobbying game too. But, it's interesting because a lot of folks have asked me, like, what exactly does do football coaches want out of lobbying? And I think on issues like collective bargaining and employment, they haven't necessarily made a concrete decision as a whole. Obviously, individual coaches have opinions and they voice those opinions. But I think, what the statement said about this agent issue is a really big issue for coaches and for players. And I don't, unlike asking for an antitrust exemption, I don't really see any downside for the players and their rights and their freedoms to have some sort of certification and registration process for NIL agents, because we have all heard the stories, and the coaches, they care about the players, sure, but they also just I think they're sick of dealing with agents who, don't know what they're talking about, or who are, unprofessional, and, you could take that word however you want. I think that seems to be emerging as a huge concern for them that wasn't really addressed that deeply in this hearing.
Amanda, you earlier you said, some of them got sound bites, for their social media or whatever. Dennis Dodd tweeted this out earlier, and it said, this recently from a stakeholder in the NIL debate. Whoever their schools, conferences, NCAA lobbyists are, have no friggin' idea what they're doing. They're not talking about the things that worry Congress. They're talking about the things that worry them. And especially given the multitude of things that Congress has to deal with right now in the world that we're living in, you can't go on Fox News or CNN and say, like, oh, by the way, I fixed the NIL problem. No one cares, but no one cares. Like, there's not like Anderson Cooper or, Jesse Waters or those hosts aren't going to be, Sean Hannity's not going to be like, oh, good. See, you're out there doing it. They don't care. Yeah. That it's not going to move it.
A blip on the radar.
So what's the point of this until they actually, get to a point where Congress realizes their job is to pass legislation and not have hearings?
It's a really good point, because we're not going to see these sound bites on CNN or Fox News. We're not going to see that, we'll see them on social media, right? But the reason that I've been told that legislators, especially at the federal level, are interested in having their 15 minutes of fame on this issue, whether or not there's any sort of legislation that actually gets passed, is the university lobby. And I'm not talking about, I've written about the NCAA and power conference lobby. I'm talking about the deeply entrenched higher education university lobby on Capitol Hill. And these, especially the state universities that are the flagships of, the constituency of a particular lawmaker, they are clearly part of pushing this, right? And so if you can satisfy them as a lawmaker and say, hey, look, at least I tried, at least I parroted your talking points, that's very influential in Washington, is what I've been told. And so even if nothing gets done, there are definitely lawmakers who believe it's in their best interest from a re-election perspective and from a donations perspective to, at the very least, have public conversations about the future of college sports.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. It's great to always have you on, Amanda, to kind of clarify and help us understand some of this. We appreciate it. Amanda Kristovich with us, Front Office Sports, on many things, including the hearings today, but also the ACC, where it looks like for now they are able to enjoy, or try to, the next 5 years. It was one note from Ralph Rousseau, and then we'll have Jim Grobe on the show to join us. He said, the projected opportunity of approximately $120 million in new revenue over the next 6 years, with additional direct pass through the college football participant shares, which is $4 million first round, $8 million second round, $14 million semis, and $20 million in the national championship. That's how you could add that to the mix, plus what they could make with new money based on their success ratings, et cetera, in the ACC to help close the gap, which is what it's all about, with what the Big Ten and the SEC teams are all being able to get and share. When we come back, he coached at Baylor for a year. He coached at Wake Forest. He was a part of the College Football Playoff Committee. Jim Grobe joins us. He's next. This is 365 Sports. Baylor alumni, fan engagement, Doug Furch, and also Paul Thorpe. When that Big 12 tournament starts later in the week in Kansas City, with Baylor's women there first and then the men, Baylor will have a setup for donors, alums, etc., fans, at usually the team hotel. They'll have different events like dinners, pep rallies, and much more. That will happen when they're in Kansas City and wherever they end up going for however long it might be, one round or more when it comes to the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments. If you want to know more, once they get the assignment, you know Kansas City this weekend and part of next week, then you don't know where else is it going to be. They will be there. They will be there to help share the experiences if you're a Baylor alum, donor, booster, whatever else. Baylor alumni fan engagement.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
We consider, there's a lot of people we have, guests, coaches, personality, Hall of Famers, players, whatever, media as friends of the show. We were very fortunate to get to know Jim Grobe back in 2016. He took over the Baylor football program during that summer and got to know him well. We've stayed in touch with him, former Wake Forest head coach, and, of course, a part of the College Football Playoff Committee the last 3 years. Coach, thank you very much. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and David Smoak with us. I got a question to start with. Is Mack Rhoades crazy to take that job as the chairman, to be the one that answers questions starting next year?
Well, I'm sure his stress level will go up a little bit. But, this was his first year on the committee, and he was so impressive. He's got great insight into college football, and I think he'll be perfect in that role. I thought Ward Manuel did a great job. Boo Corrigan did a great job. But, you go through a week of trying to rank the best 25 teams, and then you've got to go on TV on Tuesday night. I was always happy to be on the plane headed back to Georgia when those guys had to get on TV and talk about what the committee had come up with. But he'll do a great job. There couldn't be anybody better to represent the committee.
Let me ask you this, if you don't mind. I asked about transparency with the College Football Playoff Committee. Mack was in studio with us about a month ago, and he didn't quite understand what I meant, and I don't even know if I know what I was wanting either. What is the biggest misconception, in your opinion, about the College Football Playoff Committee?
Well, I think, our goal is really to rank the top 25 teams, and we don't put the 25 teams into the brackets. That's kind of decided by the conference commissioners, the management committee, whatever, the guys that kind of run the whole show. So our only mission really as the playoff committee was to rank the top 25 teams, and I think that's where the confusion came, that we ranked the top 25 teams, and then a lot of people felt like we put them into the brackets, but the brackets were already decided before we ranked the top 25.
Okay, my fellow FSU brethren will kill me if I don't ask you this question. And it's been weighing on my mind for over a year now, Coach. When it came down to Florida State or Alabama a year ago, in the last of the 14 playoff, and it came down to Jordan Travis, between coaches and how heated was that discussion, how complex was that discussion, because on the transparency part of it, we only get like one thing, and then what, the talking heads who aren't in the committee react to it, but we don't really know. Like, that's, I think, the thing most people are curious about. When you have a controversial decision like that, what is the process? Is it grueling? Is it tough? Like, is it splitting hairs at the end of the day?
Well, it was really tough because, of course, we had Florida State ranked up in the top 4 all year long, and it was a tough situation for us because at that time, when the Pac-12 was still a factor, we had 5 major conferences for only 4 slots. So that made it really tough on the committee. And, we start out with strength of schedule being important. Head-to-head competition, of course, is really, really important. Comparative outcomes of common opponents is really important to the committee. But other relevant factors that we were told to consider was the unavailability of key players and coaches. And so when you lose a quarterback who is, at that time was being considered for the Heisman Trophy, you lose a quarterback of that caliber. And then we actually got to see them in the backup quarterback in the playoff or in the ACC championship game. And so it was a tough decision. I won't tell you that it wasn't a tough decision, but based on the parameters that we were given, especially considering the unavailability of a key player, that's just the way it came out.
Coach, I don't know about you, but I grew up, and you're a little bit older than me, but dreaming of the day that when maybe college football would have a playoff. And now we've had it, and we've had the 4, and now we've had the 12, and who knows, we'll probably have a 14 or a 16 here pretty soon. But for not having ever had a playoff to see where it is now is pretty mind-boggling. What did you think of seeing a 12-team playoff this year from just a fan perspective, but also from an old coach's perspective? What were your thoughts?
Well, I thought that the 12-team playoff was good. I think we've got to be careful. These are college football players, and if we expand the playoff too much, I think there's a lot of kids that are going to get banged up along the way. I do think that the playoff is a really, really good thing. I think there are a lot of really good people trying to decide the best way to go about it. Certainly, it would be very simple to just expand to 16 teams and let those guys play it off. 16 plays one, whatever. But I do think that we have to take the student athlete into consideration. How many games do we want those guys to play? They're already playing 12 games. There's a conference championship game for a lot of those teams. And then, to expand the playoff, how many games do you want these college kids to play? But I think the simplest way is to expand it. We found out that maybe getting a bye is not the best thing for teams. I always felt like when I was coaching, I really felt like if we were playing really, really good and we were healthy, I didn't want an open date. And as it turned out, the teams that had a bye got beat. But I do think that, it's something that we need to look at really hard. We want to find the best team in college football. I think back when, the FCS schools were having their playoff, and I think they had 16 teams in their playoff. Some of the coaches that I talked to that were either in it or won it felt like the healthiest team ended up winning the national championship, not necessarily the best team at the end of the season. So I think it's good for fans to have the playoff. I enjoy the playoff. I enjoy seeing the games. I thought it was interesting that all the home teams in the first round won. So I think home teams have an advantage. And I think, deciding do you have a playoff with buys, is that necessarily a good thing? So I think going forward, there are a lot of good people working on this. And it just has to be tweaked to try to find out the best way to do it.
I know you're just one in a room of many, and there's a lot of criteria and Lord knows maneuvering of what happens from week to week. You mentioned, and I've never quite understood this, how much head-to-head. I understand why head-to-head should matter. It should be a huge part of it. But for the longest time throughout the year, BYU had beaten SMU at SMU early in the year and remained unbeaten. And yet they never seemed to be much on the radar of the committee. And I know you can only say so much, maybe you can, but what was the discussion about BYU and where they were?
Well, I think head-to-head competition, there's no question that's a big factor for us. But of course, you're playing 12 regular season games, and I think one of the things that we have to look at is what happens early in the season, and then how does the season play out the rest of the year. And so while head-to-head competition is really, really important, it's not the only factor. And I think if we had two teams that were totally even at the end of the year in our minds, I think then the head-to-head competition would definitely play into it. But I think, looking at teams that play early in the year, we not only look at that, but we want to look at how they play the rest of the season, and are they a much better team by the end of the year than they were early in the season.
Jim Grobe, head coach at Wake Forest. He was at Baylor for a year, elsewhere too, and then on the College Football Playoff Committee for the last 3 years.
What do you learn from your perspective as a longtime coach compared to the people who haven't coached, who are administrators or older media people, or the people from the business world, about the perspectives of how people see the game differently than you?
Well, I went into it thinking that possibly we needed more coaches on the committee. That was my thought when I first went in. But after 3 years on the committee, I leave here at 11:30 in the morning on Sunday to go out to Grapevine, Texas for the meetings, and I come back and get back about 11 o'clock on Tuesday night. And that whole time that I'm gone, we are doing nothing but grinding, trying to pick the top 25 teams. And so when I went into the committee, I thought, maybe we needed more coaches. But I think we've got a great mix. I think we've got some former players that were great, some in college and professional football. I think it's really good that we have media people on the committee. They certainly study college football as much as anybody. the athletic directors are really invested in the committee and in what's going on, for the college game. I've been very impressed with the athletic directors. And then the former coaches, we bring a good coaching perspective to it as far as, maybe the schemes that are used on offense and defense and the way we look at it. But you bring up a good point. There are 13 people on the committee. And when we would come in, I'd come in with my top 25 and I'd say, okay, I've got it down. This is the way it ought to be. I've been studying film since Wednesday. I've been up all night trying to figure out who the best 25 teams are, and I've got my list, and this is the way it's going to be. And then as we go around the room and we talk, it was so impressive to me with the different approaches, the different angles that people took as they looked at these games and how they looked at the teams. And, every once in a while, somebody would come up with an idea that I had not thought about that I had to factor in. So I think the committee has good balance. I think it's good that we've got former players, former coaches. We've got, press and media people involved and athletic directors. I've been so impressed with the athletic directors and their insight. And I've really been impressed with the entire committee and how we don't bring egos into the committee. We don't really bring a dog into the fight. Everybody, I think, is even-handed. And I think at the end of the day, everybody that I've known on the committee wants to get it right because we want the players to earn it on the field. We want to reward the players, regardless of who the coach is, regardless of who the teams are that we're looking at. We want to reward the players that earn it on the field.
Coach, you know the ACC very well, 13 years at Wake Forest, also a player there at Virginia. So, I mean, you know the conference about as well as anybody. You know the issues they've been facing here over the last year or two in terms of lawsuits and Florida State and Clemson and all of that. And a resolution, a settlement approved today where there's going to be some different revenue distribution depending on wins and TV ratings and things of that nature. Just curious, not sure how much you got to read up on the settlement itself, but your thoughts on the ACC coming to an agreement with Florida State and Clemson, lasting until at least probably the next 5 years or so, and then after that, I guess all bets are off. But your thoughts on a different-looking ACC moving forward after today that's going to be doling out money based on things like TV ratings as well as winning on the field?
Well, I think success deserves to be rewarded. And I really worried a lot about Florida State and Clemson, possibly, maybe Miami, possibly not being in the ACC. I just couldn't imagine that happening. And I'm so glad that they got it worked out. It's just, it's a situation where Clemson and Florida State have been so good for so long. And, of course, Miami is bounced back now. They're playing great football. There's some other teams in the ACC that are really strong. And so I do think that it's great that they've worked out a system. I don't totally, of course, understand the system because I haven't been involved in those meetings. But the idea that the successful teams need to be rewarded, I think, is great. And I'm so happy that we've still got the Noles and Clemson and all those top teams are still in the ACC's been able to stay together. It makes me happy.
Did you feel, because you got to kind of cross a couple of eras in the leadership of the ACC, and now seeing it differently, the complaint from a lot of the schools that were more football driven was this conference is not wholesale committed to football because they were all in on basketball. Now, I think at the conference level, that's maybe changed at the top where they commit more to football, but each individual school hasn't maybe completely bought into that yet. Do you feel the shift that they're at least more balanced? Because forever they were kind of content to be the basketball conference, and if you were good at football, that was a bonus.
Well, I do think that times have changed. I think, college football is really, really popular right now. And there's a lot of financial gain to be in the top level in college football right now. I don't think that you can be in a conference really that can be carried by basketball or football. It would be, to your advantage if you could be really good in both. But I do think that the ACC for the longest time hung their hat on basketball. And now it's obvious that's what we're talking about today with the playoffs in college football, that college football has become really, really important. And I think it's important for conferences, to have some balance. I don't think it's necessarily good to hang your hat on one or two teams. I think developing throughout the country leagues that have balance, that have good teams at the top, top 5 or 6 teams, are really, really good, not just one or two teams at the top. And so I think, Florida State and Clemson have kind of carried the banner for the ACC. And now going forward, it would be nice to see that all settle down and everybody just get back to playing good football.
Jim, is college football pro football now?
Well, the where we've gotten to is definitely there's kind of a pay-for-play thing going on in college football. I don't think it's necessarily pro football, but I do think that money's becoming a factor as far as where kids go. I think the thing that probably needs to happen, I see in the NFL, I think, there are rules for free agency and the way players are able to go from team to team. And it seems like, in college football right now, there aren't a lot of rules, at least, and I got to tell you, I'm on the outside looking in. I'm not involved in any meetings. I'm not involved in anything that goes on, but it just seems like, we need to have some structure, at least as far as how many times a kid can transfer. There probably, I hate to even say this, I can't believe I'm saying this, there probably needs to be some type of salary cap. I mean, there probably needs to be some organization in the way kids are paid and rewarded, for being good players. But I think it's just kind of gotten, I think it's a little bit right now of a runaway train, and it's gotten a little bit out of hand. And it seems like the teams with the most money, are going to be the most successful. And so there are a lot of things to be decided down the road, but I do think that we need to kind of have some rules right now for college athletes. And I worry about college athletes right now that are making more money than some of their coaches, college athletes that are making more money than anybody else at the university. And if they get out of school and they can't make that same amount of money, it just seems like to me down the road there are going to be some unintended consequences for a lot of these kids.
Do you think that they'll ever be able to get to a collectively bargain standpoint where all that stuff you said is possible? It's just that you have a lot of athletes that have to come together and a lot of leaders. And so far, the leaders have been reticent to collectively bargain.
Well, I think whether it's collective bargaining or just rules that the universities come up with, I mean, the universities are still in the education business. And I think that, we've kind of lost the student athlete. I don't think anybody looks at it that way right now, unfortunately. But I do think that it's important that some rules are put into place. And I'm not sure the players should be, deciding the rules. I do think for the longest time, I did feel like we needed to do more for the players. We had a lot of kids that were underprivileged and just had trouble having their parents travel to games and to go home for breaks. Things like that were things that I felt like we were kind of missing the boat on. And then when we started, with players getting paid to play, it's kind of become a runaway train. And I do think that there's some really good people looking at this, smart people. I think, if I were in the leadership of the NCAA, I would get with the NFL and find out how they deal with free agency, how they deal with salary caps, how they do, because that's basically the way it's gone. And it's gone there in a hurry. And I think it's caught a lot of people off guard, to be honest with you. I think it's kind of gotten to the point now where we all look at it and think it's not really going in the direction that we think college athletics should go, but it's going to take some work and effort to get it right.
I had a question. I've always asked when we have coaches on who have been at multiple places, and obviously the uniqueness of 16, when there was the coaching change with the staff being intact and you adding the interim title. But prior to that, when you went to Wake Forest, did you do coaches when they take a job at a program, for whatever reason, retirement, lack of success or whatever, do you talk to the coaches who had been there before, or is that something that even happens?
Well, I think we do. Typically, we know a lot of the coaches at most of the programs, at least a couple of the coaches that are there. And so we try to talk to them about maybe things that they thought they didn't do well, thought that we could improve on. But I think for the most part, you bring your system in and run your system, and you try to at least the way I did it, I tried to start over again with the players. A lot of times coaches go in and they kind of clean house and they get rid of the old players and try to bring in the new guys. And I always felt like it was important to kind of restart the program as far as not taking for granted who the good players are and the bad players were, but to try to give every kid a chance to start over again. And I think, most coaches try to look at what the program, if the program was not successful, what did they do wrong? And I think you always try to talk to the coaches that were there to find out, what they think might be. And it's not easy, to be honest with you, because they're not happy that they didn't get the job done. But I do think that we try to, and usually in most cases, I think you keep a couple guys off the old staff. That's the thing I tried to do, to find out if there were guys on the staff that the players respected and the administration respected that we could keep, and then you learn a lot from those guys.
Jim, we had RG3 on, Robert Griffin III, last Friday, and he was remarkable. It was a great, great segment with him. He mentioned that of the quarterbacks in the early 2010s at Baylor, Bryce Petty, RG3, and then he also, of course, mentioned Seth Russell. He said that Seth was better than all of them. Of those three guys that were fantastic, you only had a chance to spend some time with him, and obviously he also dealt at times with injuries. What kind of a person was he, and what kind of a player did you think he was?
Well, I first of all, I thought he was a great kid. I thought, well, not a kid, but I thought he was, I call all these guys kids because I'm so old now.
Sure.
But I really felt like he was a quality person, a really, really, dedicated football guy, did it good on and off the field. But the thing that was so impressive about him was he threw the ball extremely well and he could run. And what happens a lot of times when you talk about a dual threat quarterback, basically he does one or the other. He's a runner who can hit the 3rd and 5 throw, or he's a thrower who runs a little bit, but he's basically not going to make big plays with his feet. And I thought that Seth was a kid that really brought both to the field. He could beat you running the football, and he could go the distance. Not just 4 and 5 yards a pop. He could go 50, 60 yards, but that he also threw the ball really well, and he made our offense click. There's no question.
When you start the college football playoff committee run, and now, of course, you served your 3 years, and there's some changes, and we mentioned Mack as the chairman or the spokesperson. When do they and how much do they feed you information? Is all that at your hands, email, text, whatever, because you have to study as you watch the week go by, the games go by, and then get yourself to the meeting on Sundays, as you mentioned?
Well, what we've got, I mentioned that, games actually start on Wednesday. Sometimes teams would play on a Wednesday, they'd play Thursday, they'd play Friday, all day Saturday. And by 8 o'clock Sunday morning, they give us an oversized iPad. And by 8 o'clock, typically by 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, every game that's been played is on our iPad. And we can watch the TV copy and we can watch the coach's copy, which is just play after play after play without commercials. And so everybody starts studying, from Wednesday through Sunday and even Monday morning. We don't meet until Monday at noon. And so by Monday at noon, everybody has had a chance to look at every game. And some games as the season goes on are not as important. Some of the teams are not in the mix. But as you go through the season, you basically are watching as much football on TV. I enjoy when I'm at home just watching the TV games. And then when I get up, Sunday morning and start traveling, I've got all those games on my iPad. I get to the hotel, usually about 3 o'clock and start watching my iPad and do that until late evening and then get up Monday morning and I'm watching games Monday morning till about noon. But in addition to watching the games, one of the things that we were tasked with was to watch as much as we possibly could. But then when we get together on Monday, Sports Source has about every metric that you could possibly dream of, things that I never even thought of, to be honest with you, at times. And so we not only are tasked with trying to watch as much, football as we can, either, on games on TV or the video that we get, but then we also are given a sheet from the Sports Source people that give us a lot of things that we can look at, records versus the top 25, records versus the top 10, teams record against teams that are above 500, relative scoring offense, relative scoring off defense, offense and defense compared to what other teams did against the teams that you watch. And so we got a lot of things to look at, nothing probably more important than just strength of schedule. But I think by the time, we get together for our meetings, and certainly by the time we finish our meetings each week, we've not only looked at these teams, almost till our eyeballs are ready to fall out, but then we've also looked at what they've done from a perspective of analytics. And I think by the time you put the analytics together with what you've seen on film, you get a pretty good beat on who the teams are. And the nice thing for me is I'm only one opinion. Mm-hmm. And nobody's disrespectful in those meetings. We respect each other, and everybody's opinion is important. We listen to everybody's opinion about each of the teams, and by the time we finish, we've hashed it out pretty good. And I usually feel like we've got a pretty good beat on the top 25.
Jim, thank you, Coach. We appreciate it. Are you hitting them straight at Reynolds, or is it too cold?
Well, I get to work on it more now.
Yep. Yeah, you will. Yeah.
It has been a little chilly. The playoff committee was an honor for me. I can't tell you how proud I was to be a part of the committee the last 3 years and made so many new friends and respect so many people that were on the committee now. But it didn't help my golf game. There's no question about that. So hopefully, I don't know that it's going to get any better. I might get worse because I'll spend more time at it, but I am going to spend some time with it, I promise. And, see if I can't keep it in the fairway a little bit more. That would be a good thing.
You're a class act, Jim. We appreciate it, Coach. Great to have you on the show. Good to hear from you.
All right. Y'all be good.
Thank you. Jim Grobe was at Wake Forest for well over a decade, and then, of course, 1 year at Baylor, then on the college football playoff committee. He mentioned strength of schedule, which is really, remember, Dave Bartu has mentioned this to us, that they really don't look at it like we think they do with strength of schedule. Maybe the term of how do you define strength of schedule? I know what that means to me, but it's not quite that simple. But appreciate him. And Paul, I think he quickly answered your question and moved on.
He did. And I didn't want to get argumentative, so I didn't follow this up. He said, we watched the ACC championship game with the backup quarterback in, but they won that game.
So?
But, okay, the evidence that they had was that they could still win a game with they had 2 games, actually, without Jordan Travis. They won 2 games with 2 different quarterbacks, which is something that Ohio State did in 2014.
And won it all.
They won it
with 3 or 4.
So, So, again, Florida State was on their 3rd quarterback. The precedent was there. They won the game.
The problem with 14 is the precedent was there against what TCU and Baylor represented compared to Alabama.
And look, Florida State got it all kind of combined. That's my only problem with his answer there. Had they lost to Louisville, I understand that. But they didn't. They won.
But they wasn't pretty enough, Paul. All right, so Jim Grobe, thank you very much for Jim Grobe in his time today. Craig Smoak Off the Radar just around the corner. There was one college football note. We have, by the way, someone just asked about, have you discussed the ACC, the settlement, Clemson, Florida State? We opened up the show with that. Yes, we did.
Yeah, I mean, the basic thought is it seems like a great win for Florida State, for Clemson. Potentially, that would also indicate wins for Miami, North Carolina, if you lump them all together. Depending on who you think's attractive enough as part of that group, maybe a Georgia Tech. Feels like they won today as well. I think the immediate everybody wins is that the ACC's basically almost guaranteed to last another 5 years. Would that be fair to say? I mean, because once the money goes down, you can see a pathway where people go, all right, we've been saving up for 5 years knowing this day was coming. Now we're ready to write the big check. But, to do it now, especially when you just got what you wanted, if you're Florida State and Clemson, you just got everything that you were suing over, it would be ridiculous to turn around now and go burn $200 million to get out when you just got the unequal revenue sharing and more money right there at your fingertips. All you got to do is just show up, bring your usual TV audience. You win some games. That'll also bring some money. But I did see it pointed out, and I don't know who pointed it out originally, but the whole mock-up of the scheduling with who gets to play Notre Dame, those being those same big brands, more TV ratings, more money. So it's kind of rigged in their favor now, if anything.
So, because, NC State is not going to, they'll get to play Notre Dame, but they'll get to play them half as much as Miami does or Florida State or Clemson. And when Notre Dame brought that up before they decided to do that, when it was floated out there by Pete Vivacqua, the AD at Notre Dame, it was the schools he mentioned were Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. And they're opening the season, Catholics versus convicts this year. That's how important that game is to the ACC and to Notre Dame.
Yeah, so I think that they all stand to benefit greatly because they're in the best position to do so, and so they got what they wanted. And so I think that on a who won type of conversation, I think in the near term, everybody wins because everybody's pretty much okay for right now. But we'll check in again in 3 or 4 years once this thing starts to get towards the end and see where everybody still is in terms of happiness levels and all of that. But I do think the big winners were definitely Florida State and Clemson. No more lawsuits. Everybody wins there as well, ACC included. You don't have to just burn money through attorneys. Everybody can drop that and move on and figure out how to make it the best conference it can be for the next 5 years. And beyond that, I think for other schools who aren't in that club, it's a lot of what do we do now? How much do we do it to the point of why this was a good idea? Does this spur other programs like a Wake Forest to now spend more money on football than they were already? And I don't know how much they were spending. They might be spending an adequate amount, but the whole idea in part of doing the revenue sharing was, there's others that aren't putting in their fair share and aren't competing on the same level as us. This should force them into doing that because now you're rewarded for actually winning games and being a part of big matchups that draw eyeballs. So you would think that gets people to invest a bit more. What all that means, in the long run, I don't know. But, it's a good day for wanting to get rid of lawsuits. It's a good day to be an FSU Clemson fan and anybody else who's probably looking over the fence line at the other neighborhood that seems a little bit nicer that you want to move into eventually. That's kind of where our heads are at the moment. And, there's tons of conversations like what could the Pac-12 schools possibly be thinking now that joined the ACC? and looking at
let
their.
me tell you something about SMU now.
Well, SMU's got to be going, what the hell
Yeah.
does this mean for us in the long run? And I'm sure that Brett Yormark is sitting there just, clasping his hands together and just rubbing them a little bit and thinking about, okay, how can we take advantage of this in 5 years when the time comes and go pick off some teams? But so, there's a lot of things like that will just unravel over the months and years to come.
Billy Embody covers SMU. I said, what is the mood at SMU after today's settlement? People are worried about the future for the most part, but it's 5 years out, so it's not that bad. And if you're one of those schools, and the Big 12 schools can learn this lesson from Nebraska, Colorado leaving, A&M, Missouri leaving, Texas and Oklahoma leaving, is that you're always like the one going, oh, my God, what about us? Go fix yourself. Some schools are doing that better than others. Some are all of them are trying. But don't wait for the next bag to drop or whatever to drop. Go take care of yourself, and that's what you're referring to with those in the ACC. Remember what it felt like, what it's been like the last couple of years. Now you have a future. Go take advantage of it. For the next time this occurs, you're in better shape.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope that there's been enough wake-up calls at this point. But, yeah, I think there's just a lot of different thoughts like that. But mostly the big takeaway is FSU and Clemson got what they wanted. And as a byproduct, so did a couple of other schools. And I think that that should tamper down some of they're joining the Big Ten tomorrow, like that we've heard for the last 3 years. That's not happening. So, at some point it's probably bound to happen that Florida State goes somewhere, but there is going to be a little bit of time between now and when that does actually occur. And it's probably going to be about 5 years, although we'll definitely hear some things before then.
But things could change
Sure.
in that you could very easily have a conference or a playoff system that, is it 16? Does it behoove you to really jump out of it if, it's at 16 and, you're getting 2 teams at least every year? And
The
you're
Oklahoma quandary?
Yeah, exactly. Does it?
We make the playoff every year. Like, we got to make more money now. Well, now look at you. You're not making the playoff. I know it's been 1 year sample size.
But I could hear Joe Castiglione calling up Clemson and Florida State going, don't do it, guys.
Yeah, like if you're Clemson and you go to the playoff for the next 5 years in a row, and then you're making all this extra money because you're playing in all the biggest games because your schedule's set up to play in the biggest games, because now you've rigged that. And you go off and you win the conference 5 years in a row, make the playoff every year and do that, then, the thing about it is, what the hell does 5 years from now look like? Mm-hmm. What does college sports look like? Because that's what I brought up earlier, is if you were to go back to 2020 now and say, guess what 2025 looks like in college sports, people would have been like, shut your mouth. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're cuckoo. But I wouldn't be, right? So I don't know what in the world 2030 looks like from a college sports standpoint. I have no idea whatsoever.
I don't even know what the rest of this year
looks like. So if Clemson were to reel off all that, then in theory, maybe you would have some people going we've got it pretty good here, guys. What would be the reason to do that? You'd have to have reasons, which would be even more money or something else. But there's only so many TV spots as well. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but you're definitely happy for the meantime.
All right, when we come back, Craig, we'll have Off the Radar. There are some juicy stories to get to. Also around the corner, John McClain at 5:30, Hall of Fame columnist. We'll look at Utah's 2025 schedule. 2 teams left. Utah today, West Virginia tomorrow, when it comes to what we will discuss when it comes to the Big 12 schedules. We started that 14 days ago today, 15 days. Paul's Top 5 around the corner, and this is 365 Sports. I was walking out of the bank yesterday, and First National Bank of Central Texas, I needed to get some invoices for a client, a sponsor, notarized, and I'm walking out the door, and I see Joshua. He, of course, is the owner of Don Shumidor and Coffee Beans. Cheyenne's a part of that business, too. I was there over the weekend. I didn't get a chance to get there in time. I was going to get a couple of cigars for me to play golf on Saturday, but I didn't. I didn't play golf on Saturday. So I waited until I saw them earlier today. He has a great business. Vita Dreams, which is a gummy, it's CBD. I'm telling you what it works and how it works for me. Some it may be too much. For some it may not be enough. But I know exactly how many gummies I need to take. A couple, sometimes one. And on the weekends, not nearly as many because I don't have all I got to work tomorrow, although I work every day in a way. This stuff works. Fight a dream. It's not harsh. It's not like while you're gone. It works for me to get me to sleep, and I get that extra time. So when the alarm goes off, I'm not like, oh my God. Also, great cigars. Macanudo, Aston, Rocky Patel, Padron, Cohiba, so many. They have a wall that's filled with military veteran-made cigars, brands. So if you are interested in that, they have it, plus the torch lighters, the cutters, and more, and even pipes if you want those. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports. Grab bag of stories on Tuesdays and Thursdays from around the sports world, and sometimes it'll feature college football, and today it will feature a little bit of college football right off the top, as there is some programming news, as we were set to see a season of Hard Knocks, the college football edition, featuring Bill Belichick in his first year as head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Well, apparently that has now been called off, the deal falling through for North Carolina to be a part of HBO's Hard Knocks off-season series. A spokesperson for NFL Media said NFL Films had discussions with Coach Belichick and UNC about appearing on Hard Knocks this offseason, but couldn't reach an agreement. There was a report last week by CBS that said this was basically close to being a done deal, but that it hadn't been officially signed off on, but that they would ultimately get there. So another report that I saw came out from Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk, who said that part of the reason, not all of the reason, but part of the reason why it got canceled was because NFL owners were not pleased with the concept. He said Tuesday's statement from NFL Media regarding the failure of NFL Films in North Carolina to reach an agreement regarding off-season Hard Knocks comes a day after rumors began to spread the deal was off, due in part to the fact, and it is indeed a fact, that multiple owners weren't happy about Belichick getting an NFL Films platform, and he had previously said that, basically the same thing, that they didn't want him getting NFL Films TV time. So if you were looking forward to Hard Knocks, North Carolina with Bill Belichick, sorry to tell you, but you won't be seeing that because it's not going to be produced or created. I would have
watched this, but again, he's like watching paint dry, and yet you can learn from him, right? Yeah. But I don't know. I was surprised when I saw that, and then Lombardi got involved because that's his general manager, and I was like, okay, they got NFL experience, so they would know the good and the bad, you would think, whether they ever were a part of a franchise that was a part of this or not. What is Bill Belichick going to give you when it comes to any kind of, access?
The off-season Hard Knocks, all right, guys, we're going to do this.
Well, I mean how much access are you going to get with him?
I don't know. Maybe he's turned over a new leaf.
Let his girlfriend be the feature.
Here's the thing. I think he's taking on all this because the fact that a 72-year-old man can keep up with a 28-year-old woman, you can't. So he's got to find other things to do. So he's like, listen, I'm busy. I can't go to the Instagram party for this. Go on your own. Take your friends. That's part of the reason I think he took this job. While he probably enjoys having a girlfriend 50 years younger than him, there's a physical stamina toll that he just can't run with.
Well, yeah, I think too, you just don't shrivel up and die, Yeah. He's 72, but I don't think when we're 72 that we're going to be sitting there going, all right, put us in the home. I think if we can coach football and date a 28-year-old, if that's in the cards or whatever she is, then, there's going to be people that take up that offer. You can definitely look at that situation and go, that's weird. No doubt about it. But him just coaching football, that's what he does. So, it's a strange time in his life. It's a strange time to be an observer of his life. I was at least partially interested in just checking this out. I'm not a Hard Knocks watcher, though. I don't really watch it at all and have it for a long time. This would have at least pulled me in a little bit because it is college, and just in this era, we don't get a lot of the behind-the-scenes, actual look-in that isn't all polished up. And I'm sure that's what it would have been to an extent anyways. It would have been a big recruiting pitch for why you come to North Carolina. But I was a little bit interested. I was interested how's the girlfriend going to be weaved in and out of the show? Is she going to be on there or – yeah, I don't know. But regardless, there will not be a Hard Knocks North Carolina.
And he may not have wanted her on it. And
maybe not. We'll never know.
I would have thought that would have been kind of a hook to kind of watch the relationship. That's none of our business. But at the same time, just how she and what role will she have, if anything, in not his life, but as a football coach.
Yeah, maybe we don't see her at all. She's a non-factor, and that'd be totally fine with me. I don't think that brings in necessarily extra eyeballs. Maybe it would have, but yeah, I don't know what they were planning on exploring, and we won't know because there is going to be no Hard Knocks North Carolina. But there you go with that. Meanwhile, there is plenty of stuff going on in the NFL today, as a lot of maneuvering going on when it comes to players and contracts and rosters and all of that. Everybody gearing up for the NFL draft here in about a month's time? Are we about a month away now at this point from the NFL draft? And as of today, there's
6 weeks.
6 weeks? Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know the exact date.
Yeah.
So 6 weeks out. We still got a bit of a ways to go. But we now have a new highest paid running back ever, as Saquon Barkley is now the NFL's top paid running back. The Eagles giving him a $41.2 million extension, highest paid running back now in NFL history. That first broke by Adam Schefter. 36 of the $41.2 million is guaranteed at signing. So I've always wondered about this. So do they just drop a direct deposit the moment that pen hits paper and you leave the meeting and now you've got $36 million in your bank account? Is that how that works?
If you sign a contract and they are going to pay you $21 million a bonus, to me.
No. 36
no,
million.
I was just using 21 as an
okay.
example.
I'm not saying guaranteed at signing. That's not the bonus.
Sometimes the bonuses can be structured where a lot of it is up front. Some of it is roster bonus, like language in the contract. But no, that goes straight into your contract.
And I think I misread it. So $36 million guaranteed at signing, not signing bonus that he gets. But I was referring to a signing bonus with that question of like, does that just drop in your direct deposit like right away?
Paul,
you walk out,
I don't know.
and it's just $30 million extra or whatever your bonus was.
I would hope so.
When you walked away from that contract at the radio station,
all that guaranteed money.
we really did walk away.
Purse PERCS.
I found, I found out that the way that he paid us was illegal, and that our unemployment was like 1/10 of what it should have been. Like when he's like, you guys can file for unemployment. And I was like, oh, well, good. I've never done that before, but I guess that could help. So I go to file for unemployment, and they're like, yeah, we're going to pay you $100 every 6 weeks. And I was like, the fuck? I mean, I was like,
this
how
needs
is
to
that
be a
possible?
segment on the 365.
Oh, and this is all happening because you've been already so hit by COVID, and it just became official like 17 hours ago. That's amazing how you had all that foresight and all that happened so quickly.
I was rejected.
Yeah. I mean,
well, first of all, didn't have to wait like 3 days later. We kind of had this thing going, but at the same time, I was like, no, reject him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Saquon Barkley, now the highest paid running back in NFL history, $36 million guaranteed at signing. First NFL running back that will get more than $20 million per year. He can also get another $15 million in incentives and escalators. So that's a big, fat contract for Saquon Barkley. Had 2,500 yards between the regular season and the postseason. Broke the single-season record, which I'm not real keen on, you played more games and all of that kind of a deal, but still broke the record. Super Bowl champion, obviously. It was a big part of that run for the Eagles to hoist that Super Bowl. So good job, Giants. And, Saquon Barkley's a stud.
Yeah. Now, how about that? How much – he didn't get a lot because he was injury-prone. Giants let him go. You all see that video where they were talking about keeping him or not, or extending him or not, and was it the owner or the general manager goes, man, it's going to kill me if he ends up in Philadelphia. But you had mentioned that was going to happen. That was like –
I mean, I think he and his agents knew that, like, the minute that the Giants let me walk out that door, we are order the cheesesteaks ahead of time because we're going to Philly.
Yeah, and I think it's a great story for Saquon, who looked like his career was kind of just going to spin wheels there for a little while, especially if he stayed in New York. So he got out of there and, like, boom, megastar, like in months' time.
What a year.
Breaking a season record, winning a Super Bowl. Just incredible stuff. So he gets paid handsomely, and so much for the death of the running back, huh?
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, what does this mean is there going to be a bunch of Saquon-like contracts? Probably not, but, like, how much does this flip it on its head? Now, are just, like, super special category running backs going to get big, fat deals? Or is it going to be more across the board for guys? I don't know, but that was a storyline as recently as, like, a year ago, and has certainly been one for the last several years. And now I think you can, at least in Saquon Barkley's case, you can definitely put that to rest because he's breaking the bank.
Yeah. Is it going to affect running back money, contracts renewed or extended, or is it going to affect the draft more with running backs kind of lately being a thing?
Well, I mean, the free agent running back market's not deep. I mean, like when Rico Dowdle might be able to get a bump at 1,079 yards for the season, like that shows you like it's not that deep. But you've got it will be good for the running backs in the draft more than it will be in free agency.
Okay.
I mean, there'll be a couple who might.
You're not going to just give it to some random guy.
No, but and part of it is like Derrick Henry. Josh Jacobs actually had a good year too. He kind of gets left out of it because the Packers didn't go as far. But Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, kind of proving that like, hey, maybe let's not group all this stuff in together. But you've got this class of Genty and Hampton and a lot of guys that are coming up that they'll benefit from it and that they'll get drafted higher than they would have a year ago.
Yeah, it seems like if you're a young running back, especially one with star potential, you're very excited about this news. A Bijan Robinson, maybe, a guy like that, if he stays on the trend that he's on, that when his contract comes up in a couple years, he could cash in big time. But, yeah, Christian McCaffrey was the highest paid running back in the league. making close to $19 million, but it is now going to be Saquon Barkley. Elsewhere, the Cowboys taking a player off the Commanders board potentially, or various others that maybe we're going to be interested in. Osa Odighizuwa, big-time defensive tackle, he is staying in Dallas and will not be on the market as he has agreed to a 4-year, $80 million deal with the Cowboys. That includes $58 million guaranteed money and a $20 million signing bonus. So, yeah, I was talking about, I guess, like direct deposit, like $20 million just hits your account. I'll have to ask somebody who has actually experienced that one day. But that's how it goes in my mind. And I play as though that's my life, that you could just sign that contract and then get the alert on your phone of like fresh deposit, and then you go check it and it's got like 4 or 6 zeros extra on it.
Yeah.
It's got to be amazing. But Osa Odighizuwa, $20 million signing bonus. He's staying in Dallas. Paul, I know you've got to be excited about this.
Look, I'm glad that he's staying. One, they really needed to bring him back. He's a very good player. And two, I'm glad that they did it without having to drag on to the franchise tag and doing the normal deadlines make deals. You know, like, look, we're fine. Look, Osa's going to be here. We're going to make a deal. It's going to be fine. You know, like the Dallas Cowboys are going to be good. And then you have all that. Like that I'm glad is not there. If they do it with Micah Parsons, then that maybe starts a trend of, hey, maybe we don't have to wait until the last possible second to get this done. You know, I wonder what Jerry was like in college. You know, like, hey, you've got a 10-page
drunk and ornery.
Yeah,
Is that
you
what I
got a
imagine?
10-page paper due on Thursday. He's like, all right, well, it's only Monday, so let's not give the cart in front of the horse. But I like it, especially if they apply this to Micah, if they go out and help Dak out on the offense, particularly get him. I think they need to draft a young wide receiver. I also think there's a couple of veteran wide receivers out there that, if they were selectively aggressive, might pair nicely with CeeDee Lamb. I mean, there's one that just got released by the Jets today, and I'm sure you're going to bring that up. But we'll let you do that in a second. But I wouldn't sneeze at that as your number 2 receiver.
Well, let me get to it then, as that already answers my question. But Devontae Adams has been released by the New York Jets following them parting ways with his buddy Aaron Rodgers a few weeks ago. They've also given Allen Lazard, who is an Iowa State star, former Cyclone star, they've given him permission to also seek a trade before the league year kicks off here in 8 days on March the 12th. But he could end up being released also, is what Adam Schefter said. So basically, like, if you're buddies with Aaron Rodgers and you're not like a huge investment, like, you're free to go and like figure out what you want to do, reunite with him in a tent out in the redwoods of California and do shrooms if you want to, or go play like somewhere else if he's going to actually do that. I don't know, but Devontae, what a memorable run it was with the Jets. All those months in green and white that he had. I remember so vividly Mike Greenberg, and I do not watch him on ESPN because I don't watch a lot of the ESPN talk show stuff, but I vividly remember just how like fun and happy and, you know, just excited he was. And this has been a disaster for them. This entire experiment is a disaster. The Aaron Rodgers experiment. So, yeah, Devontae Adams is available. Paul would like to possibly see him in Dallas. Maybe Allen Lazard be available as well. But the whole experiment's basically done.
Here's the thing. If they don't get Devontae Adams and just say, hey, we're going to give a 1-year flyer deal to Allen Lazard to help out whatever young player they draft, heck, yeah, let's do it. Like, take some chances, man. They've not been doing that. And they need to. If they're not rebuilding, and, you know, Machota tweeted this out from the Combine a couple days ago, and he said the Cowboys do not see themselves in a rebuilding mode. They blame injuries for their problems. Well, they really sucked before Dak got hurt. I mean, they were not good before that. So blaming injuries on that is kind of silly, but that's the thing. So if you're not rebuilding, it's time to get aggressive. You're spending a lot of money on 4 guys right now in Dak, CD, Osa Odighizuwa, and then eventually Micah Parsons. So get aggressive. Like,
what did they do with CD's contract?
Well, they had the already built-in kick-in where he's now saved him $20 million. So
all right, yeah, that's why. Like, I always wonder these contracts are even real. But he'll get something more out of it up front to save the Cowboys now.
Yes, he will. So there is some football notes. I think that's pretty much – was there anything else that I left out as far as the football? I don't think so. So that brings me to a basketball note or two from the NBA. The Dallas Mavericks, it can't get worse. It can't get worse than trading Luka. Well, I'm already off the ship. I proclaimed that. I've not budged on that. I don't care how many games they win. I don't care if they win an NBA title. But guess what? They're not going to. They're not going to win one this year. I don't think they're going to for the foreseeable future because I think they've cursed themselves, quite frankly. But I hopped off of the wagon that I've been riding since I picked an NBA team to begin with. And so what happens from here on out, to me, I'm observing it. I don't really even feel the pain at this point. But for those that were still riding and saying, you know what, that was a really screwed up situation that happened with Luka Doncic, but I'm still riding with them because I'm from Dallas or whatever reason you have. My dad took me to games. Like, there's a lot of valid reasons to stay on board, and I understand that. But, man, it's becoming even harder to be a Mavericks fan because now one of those pieces that's, part of what your main core is with no more Luka Doncic is now out for the year. Kyrie Irving has torn his ACL officially and will miss the remainder of this season. Of course, Anthony Davis has been basically non-existent with injuries this entire time. So this whole idea by Nico Harrison, the moron, and by the too rich to understand actual human emotions Adelson family, their whole experiment's already blown up this season. So any idea they were going to go rip off a title real quick because Anthony Davis is the type of player they needed more than Luka Doncic, well, it ain't happening this year, pals. And I don't think it's happening, period, because I don't think that Anthony Davis can stay healthy, and Kyrie at this point is going to be in his 30s coming off an ACL tear. So, yeah, brutal news for Kyrie. It looked brutal when you saw him go down the other night, and this is what everybody feared. So he is going to miss the remainder of the season. It was cool to see Luka reach out with well wishes. That's his boy. That's his mi hermano is what Kyrie is referred to him in back and forth. My brother. But yeah, brutal time for Mavericks fans out there. Kyrie's out. You wonder what kind of player he'll be coming back. I know he'll work hard. The one good thing about him coming to the Mavericks, other than the run last year, which was a lot of fun, is it has given me a different appreciation of Kyrie, and not just like what the New York media told me about him or the Boston media told me about him. Like, to actually kind of see him and hear him in interviews and whatnot, I've liked Kyrie a lot more than I ever did previously, and it's made me step back from media portrayals and understand that's not what everybody always is, or understand it to a better degree. That's not what everybody always is. But he's out, so at this point, he says he's going to come back stronger than ever, but I don't know what you're holding on to if you're a Mavs fan, because this is just the season's toast. I mean, it's done now.
I was watching a podcast yesterday, or a clip of one, and it was somebody talking about Luka and said, like, the narrative that they're kind of like floating out among the NBA insiders that the Mavericks are playing is the reason they did it was they're concerned that 5 years from now, like, Luka's just not going to be a viable player. And so again,
5 years from now.
So, yeah. But with his contract coming up, that's what they're like. So he was going to be a free agent, and they could have decided to let him walk for nothing. And so the plan was, instead of saying, like, we're going to let him walk because we're not crazy about his fitness and all this, that they'll trade him for something, and then they can say, like, float out, like, this is why we were going to let him walk, blah, blah, blah. It's all nonsense, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, well, Anthony Davis has played one game for you and not even all the way through that one. And now the guy who's supposed to help Anthony Davis be good, the other elite player you have on your team, is out. So this plan could not have gone worse.
No, it absolutely blew up in their face as far as this year goes. I don't think it's going to look better when everybody's a year older and Kyrie's 33 coming off an ACL injury. So, yeah, I mean, you reap what you sow, in my opinion, man. This is karma. Like, I don't think that the spirits out there in the sports world went to go get Kyrie Irving because he didn't do anything wrong. But as a Mavs ex, it does feel sort of like they're just cursed now at this point, and that they've welcomed nothing but negativity to the franchise. So he's keeping a big head. He had the moment of shooting the free throws and crying. Did y'all see that? Where he was at the free throw line, he was crying because he was hurt, and he shot free throws.
Oh, no, after the injury,
yeah, and then he finally left the game after that. But that's one of the things that Luka had highlighted as well on his Instagram and shouting out Kyrie. LeBron shouted him out as well. But, yeah, we'll see. It's now back to rehabilitation for Kyrie Irving, and a lot of ill will that was already built up is now just stirred back up again for those who were pissed off about the Luka Doncic situation. It's just pouring more gasoline on that fire when it was finally starting to maybe just die down a little bit because people were just like, they'd said their piece. It's time to move on, and just, you're like me. You either stop watching it or you're like all in on the new team. Either way, there's not a lot to be all in with the Mavs right now, so that's unfortunate.
I gotta tell you,
there's a few things off the radar.
Thank you, Craig. I've never been like, I love Dirk because how do you not? I mean, you know, sometimes you have a player, like, for example, A&M fans, you still could love Earl Campbell, certain type athletes. But I never was a Mavericks fan because I'm a Spurs fan, and they've been a mess. But I saw that last night. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, what else could go wrong? And they're asking for more money?
Yeah, I was going to
get into that. Yeah,
I just didn't know how to like really position it, but yes, there was a story from a couple of days ago of the Mavs raising season ticket prices, and they, for some people, are going to be going up about 8%. If you're a full season ticket holder, they said that it is part of an effort to counteract or that it reflects ongoing investments in the team and fan engagement in the team, and that's what the team had said in a statement. But yeah, the average overall price is raising almost 9%, and they have their reasons as to why. But the only season ticket prices that will go up by more than 10% will be club access level. And so there's all sorts of little details like that. But basically they're raising prices and saying, well, it's for the benefit of the team and what we're trying to do. And it's like, you just traded away the biggest star the franchise has ever seen, not named Dirk Nowitzki, and you're raising freaking ticket prices?
8%.
Like, self-awareness level, -10. I just don't, like, how do you even root for this at this point? I can't, obviously. But, I mean, just, it's maddening what they're doing. And it wasn't like this with Mark Cuban.
It's tone deaf. Is that what they call
totally,
it now?
It's totally tone deaf because they don't understand the Mavericks, because they don't really live in or care about Dallas. They are quadrillionaire Las Vegas casino owners that are wrapped up in Israeli politics and like all sorts of things. The Mavericks, I don't think, are anywhere in like the top 10 of things that they care about, actually.
Well,
and Nico Harrison, his ego comes well before anything Mavericks related. So the people in charge of them right now are the antithesis of the guy who was the owner and was sitting there at every home game that he could get to and was a part of every media session that he could be a part of and was in the mud and in the dirt with you, and you could feel that. These people feel like they're just some distant spaceship operating and pushing the buttons to make it still function, but it's hard to root for.
If you've ever worked for a big company that, like you guys...
And that's what it is, dude.
It's a big company.
Yeah.
So my first radio job here, we were owned by a company that was in Utah. And they would come in a couple times a year, and the guy who was in charge, his name was Alan. He'd be like, all right, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And like he would just kind of come in. There was no...
Do you know anybody that just speaks normal?
I mean, like, no.
Do you ever let him say something without having us respond to it?
There's always a twang to it or something.
But Alan would come in, and, you know, he was kind of a boring guy, and all right, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And, you know, he would never say good work or anything like that. It wasn't... You know, if you wanted an attaboy, it wasn't coming from Salt Lake, you know. And so, and look, that was fine. But, you know, things would break and you'd call them and they'd be like, well, no, you know, like, figure it out. And so it was hard. And that's how I feel like the Mavericks are right now. And then, you know, we had a regional manager who was kind of a nice guy, but he had a big ego. So this is our Nico. And then you just kind of, he rolls in. He's like, hey, big things are going on. Da, 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 da. And then he rolls out. And then you're like, well, what the hell was that? And then you call the home office and you get the same thing. That's what the Mavericks are right now. They're being run by somebody who has no interest in them. They're just part of it. They're just part of the...
They're just a revenue stream.
They're just part of the whole thing. The Mavericks are a means to an end for them. They want gambling legalized in Texas, and they bought the Mavericks to help out with that. They have so much they can give money to whoever they want to give it to. They can line whatever pockets they want to line on either side of the aisle, whatever it's going to be. And eventually it'll probably happen. But they don't care. You're just an ass in a seat.
Did you see with the third quarter not over with, the mass exodus from the stands. And I don't know when did Kyrie go down? What part of the game was it?
I don't remember.
There was, go look at it. It looks like when a team hits a big shot, the game's over. There was a massive exodus. I mean, it was like someone had said, hey, you better get out of the building in time. One other quick note on the Mavericks. Their assistant coach, Alex Jensen, is apparently the leading candidate to become the new head coach at the University of Utah.
If I were him, Utah's a way better gig than he's got going right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can see Young at BYU and see that there's a path in college basketball that's very fruitful as well. But there also already talks about how the new arena is going to be, set up. The Adelsons, like right prior to them buying the team, purchased the land where they want the new arena/casino to go. It's in Irving.
The Texas Stadium site.
Yeah, it's the old Texas State. So the number of people who enjoyed going to downtown Dallas and being just in that scene and being in Dallas proper, I mean, now you're going to Irving for games, which for some people may be more convenient. I don't know on my end. I don't care at this point, honestly. But, yeah, now they're going to move arenas. That makes me feel even less connected to them. So, like, this whole from the ownership to the GM to the arena, like, I just don't feel any attachment to it whatsoever. Good luck to them. Good luck to the players. But, yeah, Kyrie going down is a bummer, and it just adds a lot of salt to a very fresh, open wound already for Mavericks fans.
All right, Craig, thank you very much. Appreciate it. When we come back, a couple of notes. By the way, 2025 Utah, the Utes football schedule. We will break that down. John McClain top 5. We got a long way to go. 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza, my good friend Bob Mack, he owns 5 locations in the Waco area. I had that YouTube podcast that somebody that critiques food in restaurants where they were critiquing the big name brands and even some maybe not so larger name brands of pizza. And all of them, I think there were 13 pizza brands. Marco's Pizza in this podcast was rated the best based on the crust and the sauce and the cheese and the ingredients and other parts of it. And that's not just that. It's also on delivery times and cost, etc. Marco's Pizza online, marcos.com. They have the new Marco's More menu. Spend $7.99 or more and add-on items starting at $5 each. Use the code word MORE menu when you order on the phone. Go online. You can order it and go pick it up or have it delivered. Also, the lunch special right now. Any Pozzoli and 20-ounce bottle of Pepsi. $7.99 limited time. Use the code word lunch. And a Pozzoli, of course, is like almost, it's a burrito pizza, or is it like an omelet pizza, but it's pizza ingredients inside. The triple pepperoni magnifico. You can't see the top of the pizza without massive amount of pepperoni slices on top. Bob Mack, 5 locations, Hewitt, Woodway, also Robinson, China Spring, and Bellmead in Waco. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 20
26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
We will look at the Utah schedule here momentarily. Craig will lead that segment, but a couple of other notes. How about last night, Houston breaking the Big 12 record, most conference wins in a season. Of course, there's 20 games now, but they beat Kansas in a very entertaining game. Kansas, I thought it's one of those, if they win that game, do they get on a roll? But no, they did not. Houston just had too much. L.J. Cryer had 20, and the Cougars are just so much fun to watch. They create havoc. All right, 2025 Utah. The Utes coming off a disappointing year. Craig Smoak.
Yes, it was a disappointing year for Utah, 5-7. Not at all what was anticipated when they were voted the preseason Big 12 championship favorites. Not at all what their very loud portion of their social media fan base thought was going to happen. Not at all. So they had to eat a lot of crow throughout the season. And I think if anything, it's added a little spiciness that's otherwise missing with no Oklahoma or Texas. That team that's kind of easy to root for, or I should say against, if you're not a Utah fan. They kind of made that an easy choice for folks a year ago, and to not only root against them, but to enjoy it because they went on that terrible slide. I mean, they started off 4-0. They had wins over Baylor and Oklahoma State. Little did we know that Oklahoma State in particular was not that great. And then after that win in Stillwater, realize this, Oklahoma State was top 15 when they played Utah last year and lost in Stillwater. And then Utah, after that win, went on to lose 7 consecutive games and then finally won their final game to finish at 5-7. Like, it was a miserable season, 4-0, 4-7, 5-7. But yeah, that win in Stillwater, like there at the end of September, nothing was what we thought it was at that point in time. The good news this year, we're not doing a full breakdown. That'll be later on this summer, but no Cam Rising questions. Like, at least there's not that this year. That's kind of refreshing. And that's the big noticeable thing just in terms of the team itself. Don't know what's in his future. I haven't heard or seen anything ever since he got removed from the roster, but
I'll text our friend who covers them.
I mean, whatever it is, they've got a new shiny transfer quarterback that ought to be pretty good, and here's how they will start off things. On the road at UCLA will be game number 1 for Utah, so a little former Pac action with these two ex-Pac-12 associates now in the Big 10 and the Big 12 respectively. They will play out in Los Angeles on Saturday, August the 30th. All Saturday games for Utah. So that's definitely a nice thing to have in terms of your schedule. So all Saturday games starting with the road trip to UCLA. Then you'll get Cal Poly in a blowout win on Saturday, September the 6th the following week. And then close out the non-con 1, 2, 3, easy peasy, not chopped up like some of these other schedules we've talked about, but the non-con just 1, 2, 3 on September the 13th. Wyoming, on the road, which is interesting here. So 2 road games in the first 3 games of the year, 2 road games in their non-conference with UCLA and Wyoming. So that's something that definitely jumps off the page at you, at least initially, is having just the 1 home game in the first 3 weeks. And also a nice matchup there with UCLA, although we have no idea how talented or not they'll be, but it's definitely a logo, and it's somebody you're going to have to actually get focused and locked in to line up against them.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the early part of this schedule, and look at going to Laramie, never fun. It's there,
but post Craig Bowl, not quite the same thing.
Yeah. But they've got a shot. I mean, only 1 home game in the non-con before they get into it, and then right out of the box you get Tech at home. So the conference race, they get it tough right off the bat. So they've got this big chunks of schedule. Theirs is different than I think anyone we've seen. They have the most games between buys all year long, and this first chunk is interesting. I think it should allow Devin Dampier and the offense to get going, and I still think they're going to have an elite defense. But again, we'll see.
Yeah, so the non-conference closes out at Wyoming, and then they do have a couple more games, as Paul alluded to, before their first bye. Texas Tech at home will open Big 12 play, so that's a pretty mega matchup there. I mean, if Tech goes out to Salt Lake, gets a win, then I think they're feeling great about things, or maybe Utah's better as expected, and they defend their home turf, and then things get interesting with the whole Texas Tech storyline and this championship season dream right out of the gates if you get handed an early loss. So that'll be one that's definitely of interest. And then you close out that first set of games on the road at West Virginia and Rich Rod. So West Virginia, a very intriguing team because we really don't know anything about how good to expect they'll be. There's just too many questions and uncertainties, but with all of that uncertainty, there's just as much reason to believe they could be really good as they could be really bad. So walking into Morgantown wasn't quite the nightmare that it has been in recent years here lately, but I think Rich Rod, that's going to be right at the top of the to-do list, is getting that back to being a hell of a place to have to go and play. So, to West Virginia will close out that first leg of the schedule there. And then their first bye week.
That's a tough opener. No question, home or away against Tech because of what appears to be a team that's loaded up. That Rich Rod, we don't know what they're doing. I mean, their first, that's going to be, for them, they'll have just played in Kansas, West Virginia. So that doesn't mean much. It's still early on in the Rich Rod tenure.
There's a real wild card, I think, because based off last year, I mean, they changed coaches, so you can't really do the whole, Arizona State was really good last year, and they bring all these guys back, or they were really terrible last year, and they do this. It's like, well, West Virginia was just kind of in the middle, and they lost Neil Brown, so, what does that turn into, and how quickly does that get back to?
And that Texas thing's official now. Do you see that, Neil Brown?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's official now, yeah.
What's he coaching?
I don't remember.
Still, he's just on the staff, okay. Yeah. Well, it seems like a good
hire.
It's
a role, Craig.
Yeah, it's a role. That's right. He's in a role. So at West Virginia, I'm telling you, man, this schedule's spicy now. If on paper is what we think it is, so Texas Tech, one of the contenders, at West Virginia, at least it'll be interesting still early in the season. Then they get their bye week. So after 5 consecutive games, they return and they take on Arizona State, the defending champs or the reigning champs. They're on October the 11th at home in Salt Lake City. They'll then turn around the following week, go to Provo for the Holy War against BYU. Then it's back home to take on Colorado. And then the following week, you're at home once again. So this second leg, 3 out of the 4 games are home games, as you will welcome in Cincinnati. So Arizona State, road trip to BYU, home against Colorado, home against Cincinnati. That could get very interesting. We don't know about Colorado either, but Arizona State, BYU, Texas Tech, they're so far not missing on a lot of the top dogs, quote unquote, on paper far.
Yeah, I just glancing at that. Again, I look at logos. I know that the Big 12 doesn't have as many as some of the other conferences, but that looks pretty salty.
Yep. So then the third and final leg after their second bye week, you will have Baylor on the road in Waco on November the 15th. It feels like Utah's been here 5 times in the last 2 years, but they'll be back. And so they'll be at McLean Stadium on November the 15th. Then travel the following week to Kansas State. So another one of the –
That's at home.
At home against Kansas State, and then travel the following week, their final game, to close things out on the road at Kansas, who could very well be a good team for all we know. So that last trio of games at Baylor, I think they're expected to be up near the top of the conference. Home against K-State, they're expected to be up near the top of the conference. And then at Kansas, don't really know, but they'll be, I think you'd lean more towards the top than towards the bottom, based on the way they finished last year. So that's how they will close it out. And that, to me, is a pretty stout schedule. The teams you miss out on, you will not play Arizona. You will not play Oklahoma State. You will not play TCU. You will not play Iowa State. You will not play UCF or Houston. So
no, I'm telling you right now, there's been a couple others, and there's been 15 now, right, Garrett, because of this one. Off just the top of my mind, this is among the top, at least based on what we know now, which may be nothing, probably among the top 4 toughest conference schedules.
I would think so, yeah.
I mean that last 7 is tough.
Yeah, the second half of the season, like that's one of those things where you better hope you start off on a good note, or you could really be sinking. And we could be talking about Kyle Whittingham and his successor at that point, Morgan Scalley, if they don't have a pretty nice start to the season. So, UCLA right out of the gates, I mean, that's going to be a measuring stick of some sorts there in the first game of the season. And then, a trip to Wyoming. I mean, trip to Morgantown, trip to Provo, Waco, and Lawrence. BYU in there. I think it's a tough schedule and definitely one that you could see them navigating if they get their ducks in a row. But, man, the whole theme of this is like, who the heck knows, really? But who the heck knows what Utah looks like after last year? I mean, I have no idea what to expect with them. I think quarterback play should be better, should at least be consistent. But beyond that, good defense, we know that. But outside of that, don't know how many wins that stacks up to. So, definitely a tough schedule for Utah, and a big year for Kyle Whittingham to kind of reestablish themselves, especially after all of the bluster and early talk there in joining the Big 12 and then how that worked out a season ago.
Yeah, that last 7 is really tough. And not to say that the first, when you start out with Texas Tech, I mean, you have a couple of games on that thing that you should be favored in right now on paper, and after that,
that's about it.
That's about it.
You'd be favored against Cal Poly and Wyoming, but in Big 12 play, I mean, West Virginia, Cincinnati, I don't know anybody else that you just automatically assume they'll be favored. I mean, because that'll all depend on how the season sort of goes. But, I think the only team they missed out on, is, instead of getting like the clean, hardest schedule possible, would maybe be TCU. Mm-hmm. They don't play them, but they play pretty much everybody else that you expect will be good. So there's the Utah schedule for 2025. It's definitely one of the more interesting and tougher ones on paper that we've talked about up to this point, and they are trying to get back to a bowl game, but try to do a lot more than that. From my standpoint, because just getting to a bowl game is not the standard that you built there if you're Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, you guys think that Utah fans are a little bit mouthy? Is that what you guys? What did I
They
miss?
were.
They came in hard. They came in hot and heavy. They're pissed off that the league broke up, like a lot of people. But
I said it.
They had a right to feel pretty good.
Somebody needed to be like kind of the villain too, because Oklahoma and Texas were just the villains for so long. They were the ones that were easy to root against. But Utah came in and kind of supplanted them as just the team that everybody sort of rallied against, and then they fought back, and then the losses piled up, and it wasn't as fun anymore. But I think most of it wasn't all good fun, and I appreciate the passion of Utah fans. I just wish that they'd embrace things a little bit more. But you can also understand where they're coming from of why they wouldn't and why they didn't. So, we'll see what this year turns into.
Yep, the Utah Utes, Kyle Whittingham. Is it the last year or not, or does he get a spark? And what do they do after a disappointing last year? Some of the favorites last year ended up at the bottom. Oklahoma State, Utah, among a few others too.
There's not a guaranteed bowl game though if they're not careful. Like with the schedule they have, there's definitely you're not sleepwalking to 6 wins. I don't feel like. I think you're gonna have to have your head on your shoulders.
And look, with all due respect, Wyoming not the same without Craig Bowl. They were like 3-9 last year.
But that helps. I think Utah is going to be good. I think I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. Now, are they win the Big 12 good? I don't know, but I think Devin Dampier, after watching him last year, he fits really well. I mean, of course, Andy Ludwig comes over, and he knows the offense already. I kind of like the potential of what they can do. I think they're going to surprise. Now, does that mean they're 7-5 or 8-4? Maybe, but this is a tough schedule to get there.
When we come back, John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, we appreciate it. If you have not yet today, hit the like button. We'd appreciate you doing that. If you haven't subscribed to 365 Sports, we would appreciate you doing that too. And or if you have, then spread the word. We'd love to have new members of our family. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. Oh, by the way, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago, they started having those 30-pound bags of live crawfish. $4.20 a pound right now. Pre-order by Thursday at noon. You could pick up your bags of live crawfish, 30-pound sacks live crawfish by sometime on Friday afternoon while they're open on Saturday during the weekend, too. They're closed on Sunday. Also, some of the specials they have for this week, fresh tuna steaks, $17.50 a pound. They also have peeled and deveined shrimp, which is 16 to 20 in a package, or 21 to 25 of them in a package, from $12.50 to $14.80 a pound. Imported catfish for $41 a case, and this means you have 15 pounds of catfish. I don't eat catfish. I'm not a big fish eater. I love shrimp and I love lobster. And I don't eat a lot of lobster. But if I'm going to eat fish, the kind that is breaded with a little seasoning with fried catfish, that's what I will eat. That's coming on and going on right now this week. Brian Bauer and also the Bauer family, been in the restaurant and food business for a long, long time, at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, Waco Custom Marketplace.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. He cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy. Last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Hall of Famer, that's what we call him. John McClain, and he's working on these documentaries on the PVIL, Texas high school football, and the history there, among other things. The Hall of Famer joins us on 365 Sports. John, I want to start with the Saquon Barkley contract, obviously from New York to Philly. That just gutted the Giants. And then he had the year that he had. Gets his money. Great guy. Have you ever heard anything negative at all about Saquon Barkley?
Never. From the time he started to make his mark at Penn State, then he was, I think, the second or third overall pick, and he blew out his knee early in his career. That affected him the next year, and then he came back and played well. And one reason they can't get a team to do an off-season hard knocks is because of how bad the Giants looked last year, especially when it came to Saquon Barkley's situation when they didn't want to pay him. And they didn't have to pay him a lot. And owner John Mara told general manager Joe Shane, I'm not going to be able to sleep if he ends up in Philadelphia. And nobody wants that kind of exposure anymore. Bill Belichick was going to do it at North Carolina, and that got killed. And just shows you what a great organization the Eagles are. They didn't have to redo that contract, but they did. They gave him, what, $20 million a year. He earned it. Had one of the greatest seasons in history, and they won the Super Bowl. It's just amazing. The general manager of the Eagles, Howie Roseman, what a great job he does manipulating the salary cap to always keep the Eagles at or near the top.
John, combine this week. You obviously had the normal combine, like, oh my gosh, look how good Quinn Ewers is. Oh, Will Howard's not that good. Hey, look at this Tyler Shuck. We didn't know about that. Do you think, this occurs to me every year, and I'm curious, there are guys that get super excited about players after the combine, and then they don't realize that, like, Tyler Shuck's been hurt his entire career. It's why he's 26 in his rookie year. Do you think there's guys that don't really follow college football until the combine, and they're like, where was this guy?
No, the NFL people have been scouting these players for over a year. But you still make mistakes. And I tell people a position, like, say, quarterbacks, you may have three different experts, and they like three different quarterbacks, like going to a Miss America contest. You know, three people like three different contestants. And that's just in their opinion. Well, the one that has the final say better be right. And I remember in 2006, I was in the media room. People started coming in going, wow, I can't believe that. What? Well, a guy named Mario Williams of North Carolina State was 6'6" and 290, and he just ran this, and he lifted that, and he had a broad jump of this. Nobody ever paid any attention to Mario Williams until he did that at the combine. And then he continued it at his pro day and his private workouts. Texans drafted him first overall. He was a perennial double-digit sack guy. Went to Buffalo, continued to be a double-digit sack guy. But there are others who put on great combine shows. People fall in love with them, and it ultimately cost them their job. Anthony Richardson was the greatest example. Started 13 games at Florida. 2 years ago, he went to the combine. He was 6'4", like 234. He ran great. He threw great. Everything he did was great. People oohed and awed, and he ended up going fourth overall, and so far he's been a huge bust. If he doesn't become an effective starter and stay healthy next season for the Colts, it's probably going to cost general manager Chris Ballard his job. And that shows now. They look for quarterbacks who have a lot of college starts. Bo Nix had 60 last year. Jake Daniels had 45. Mitchell Trubisky had 13. He bombed out as the second overall pick. And I was asking a question on another show today, if all these quarterbacks bouncing around affects them coming into the NFL. And I said, no, it helps them because they learn different systems. They get to play with different players. I think it helps ease their transition into the NFL. If you look like, remember, Will Howard was buried at Kansas State, and all of a sudden he goes to Ohio State, wins the national championship. I still bet one way or another, not in the first round, he ends up with his offensive coordinator, Chip. What's Chip's last name?
Kelly.
Mine's gone by. Chip Kelly, and with the Raiders, drafted in the second round, and Gabriel, 3 schools, goes to Oregon. They're undefeated, number 1 in the country, so they lose to Ohio State. So we see these quarterbacks move around. I think it helps them. That's why I think there will be a couple of quarterbacks who will do like Bo Nix. People say, well, they're going to go in the second round. Somebody takes a chance on them, and all of a sudden they're good. And like Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, whose stock seems to be rising. And other day, somebody asked me today, Cam Ward is separating himself over Shedeur Sanders. I said, why? What's he done? He hadn't worked out. He hadn't thrown a pass. Why is he separating himself? He's separating himself in the minds of a lot of media who spread it. And they haven't had the pro days. They haven't had the private workouts. They haven't had the 30 visits where 30 players can go visit at a facility, can't work out, but can visit. And then you have dinners and lunches that are private with them. For anybody to say they know what the Titans are going to do, that's impossible because the Titans don't know what they're going to do. Now, I think ultimately they'll drop Cam Ward. They'll draft him, fall in love with him, and draft him. But right now, nobody knows.
John, what did you think for both teams' perspectives about the Deebo Samuel trade from San Francisco to Washington?
Craig, he hadn't done squat in the last 2 years. And all of a sudden, they think he was overweight last year. It's funny. All these anonymous quotes start to come out about players after they're gone or when they're about to be gone. You know, he was a tremendous two-way threat. Then he had an ugly contract negotiation, and he hasn't been the same since. Now, maybe he'll go, and if he's overweight or not, you know, he'll get in shape. Do they use him the same way as Kyle Shanahan? Primarily was a receiver, but sometimes I think probably not. They'll use him as a receiver. He should be happy because he got out of got away from the 49ers, and the 49ers got a 5th-round pick, and people go, well, why couldn't they have got more? And the reason is this. Had they if they had picked up a lot of the salary, I'm sure Washington would have given them a 4, maybe even a 3, but they said, no, well, you got the salary, we don't, so they did it for a 5. And a lot of times the contracts come in. And remember, they trade the contracts. They don't trade the players.
Yeah, that's and it's $20 million or so right now. Will he end up signing a new deal with Washington to extend that, or they got a lot of money, and they're in a pretty good spot right now, but they don't need to start building up too much of that. What guys that may not work, right?
Now, I don't think, David, that they need to touch that contract. They want to see if he bounces back.
Yeah.
You know, what if he bounces back and plays the way he did 3 years ago? Then they can worry about it next year because they're not going to have as much money next year as they have this year. They're, I think, second. New England has just an obscene amount of cap room, like $125 million, and that's not counting the cap going up by $25 million, and they'll roll over a lot of that. But they can almost pluck players like free agents that are out there, almost anybody they want. And I think Washington will be very careful, not exactly judicious. They can afford to make a couple of mistakes, but I think getting Samuel to play opposite Terry McLaurin, they got to do everything they can to maximize the effectiveness of Jaden Daniels.
John, do you think Devontae Adams will have a robust market?
Robust, Paul. It depends on your definition of robust. No, he's 32 years old. I'm guessing he'll wait to see where his good buddy Aaron Rodgers ends up. Could be a long wait. He'll want to be reunited with him unless somebody gives him a lot of money, which is just not going to happen for a 32-year-old receiver, even though he can still play. He'd probably best getting a 2-year deal with a lot of incentives based on his performance next season. But there's going to be there are a lot of receivers available. And next week when they start that legal tampering period on the 10th, that's when all the deals are done. You know, they leak out, and then they can't officially be done till the 12th. So we know none of them are doing them illegally because the agents and the teams never do anything illegally. And then we'll find out on the 12th. But there's going to be so many moves being made. It'd be unbelievable. I keep seeing online on TV like ESPN, will the Bengals, they franchise T. Higgins, will they trade him? Why would they trade him? They've got Jamar Chase needs a contract. Their great defensive end, Trey Anderson needs a contract. But you want to be a Super Bowl contender. If you trade your second best offensive weapon, how does that help you? It doesn't. It hurts you. Joe Burrow wants to win now. Somebody said, well, he'll take a pay cut to help him. No, he's not taking a pay cut. He'll get his contract reworked. Instead of getting the base salary, he'll be moved into a signing bonus. He'll get all the money now, lower his base salary to help him fit everybody under the cap. So, no, the Bengals are a Super Bowl contender when they have all their offensive players healthy. And I think Joe Burrow would go ballistic if they let T. Higgins get away.
John, what was your favorite memory of the Aaron Rodgers and Super Friends in New York run there that we had over the last few months?
It will go down as one of the darkest periods in Jets history, and they've had a lot of dark ones. It's amazing. Remember, when they made that trade, there were people picking them to win the Super Bowl, even though he hadn't played it down. And I felt terrible for him, blow out his Achilles in the first game. I watched him beat the Texans last year, and I guess the highlight for me is he threw a touchdown pass that was way overthrown, and Garrett Wilson made an incredible catch for a touchdown, and Rodgers, of course, goes on his stats. So I think that's about the highlight that I saw of Aaron Rodgers. And this talk about the Giants being interested in him, if I were Giants fans, I'd rather them go with Tommy Cutlets and be terrible again and have a chance to get Arch Manning if he comes out, or get a quarterback in a draft next year is supposed to be a lot better for quarterbacks than to sign Aaron Rodgers as a stopgap.
You mentioned T. Higgins. I believe, we brought that up. The franchise tag was put on how many teams, players? Two. Is that the least ever?
No, there was one about 20 years ago, a cornerback. I can't remember who it was, but it was the Chiefs guard, Trey Smith, and T. Higgins. Now, the players, nobody wants to play under a franchise tag. They want to get a big signing bonus and a multi-year deal where they can rake in a lot more, and maybe they'll get them worked out. They don't want to carry those guys at $20-something million. They want to get a lower base salary and a lower salary cap figure. So, but boy, you talk about tough. The Bengals have it tough because they're stars. Their three best non-quarterback contracts are up, and they got to try to keep all of them. And it's an owner, Mike Brown, who has been notoriously cheap through the decades.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. Sick 'em Bears.
There we go. We can't let him go until he says that. Sick 'em Bears, and that's John McClain. We appreciate his time. Hall of Famer with us on Tuesdays in the 5 o'clock hour. When we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric, and personalize your cover. And leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
Protect your online privacy with NordVPN. Browse securely, access content from anywhere, and keep your data safe with military-grade encryption. Whether at home or on the go, NordVPN ensures your digital freedom. Stay secure. Download NordVPN today at nordvpn.com. That's NORDVPN.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. Last week I was going through the conferences that will have who's in the conference are going to be better in 2025. Then we were kind of derailed by the death of Gene Hackman, so we did 2 different movie top 5s. But now let's talk about the SEC teams that will be better. Some might be obvious to you, some might not be so obvious. Number 5, Texas A&M. Marcel Reed installed as a starter from game 1. That will be better. Healthy running backs. That will be better. 1 more year in Colin Klein's system. That will be better. The defense loses some players, but they did really well replacing them in the transfer portal. Plus, the wide receiver position is upgraded. That should all be better. Mike Elko, also a defensive genius, so don't discount what he can do in spite of losing some guys. And Torian York still exists on that A&M defense, probably one of the best linebackers, if not the best, in the country going into 2025. Number 4, South Carolina. Shane Beamer is finding his groove there in Columbia. And they've got one of the best quarterbacks coming back in Lenora Sellers. They've got some really exciting skill players on the outside. Dylan Stewart is back, the best freshman defensive end last year in the country. All these things are looking bright for South Carolina, and they finally have a coach who can make it his program, and they can win regularly if they keep on this kind of pace. Not to mention picking up Aaron Nolan as a transfer to be a backup. He was one of the top-rated quarterbacks in the 2024 class. Went to Ohio State. Now, of course, blocked by Julian Sand. Went to South Carolina. He's going to wait for Lenora Sellers to head on to the NFL, and then he's going to have a shot to take over. They have quality depth for the first time in maybe in South Carolina's history. I don't know. They haven't done a lot. The most nondescript team in the SEC is South Carolina over their history, but now they're starting to get some studs. They're playing at Williams-Brice Stadium. Number 3, LSU. From my mouth to God's ears, Garrett says. But Garrett Nussmeier is one of the better quarterbacks in the country. They should still have a good offensive line. In spite losing 3 starters off of it, they have the depth at that position. Where I think they're going to see a difference is on defense. Harold Perkins is moving into a star role, which technically makes him in the secondary, but really just allows them to put him wherever they need him to be. And if he comes off that ACL tear well, which, given it happened in September and he's going to have a lot of rehab time, he should be able to hit the ground running better than someone who had that injury later. He got hurt very early in the season, so Harold Perkins at the star could revolutionize that defense for Blake Baker, and very interested to see what they do with him, moving him all over the field, even in coverage sometimes, but more or less they're going to line him up and he's going to be like Micah Parsons or Troy Polamalu, whoever you want to say is, okay, you're going to go get that guy, whether it's the quarterback, the running back, a tight end, whatever. That's going to be Harold Perkins' role. I think that changes the whole defense, and I do think the secondary can't get much worse than it did last year, especially since you at LSU should be able to, Brian Kelly, just yell out, cornerback, cornerback. Does someone want to play cornerback here? And 5 guys could be like, yeah, I do, and they're all going to be studs. You should be able to do that. The secondary should be better at LSU in 2025, which would make a lot of things better there. Number 2, Oklahoma. Why do I say this? John Mateer, an upgraded quarterback over Jackson Arnold. And look, I know if you're an Auburn fan, you're saying, wait a minute, we think Jackson Arnold's going to be great. Maybe he is. Okay? Hugh Freeze is going through some stuff right now, so I won't pick on him today. But I will say this, John Mateer, a proven commodity, a playmaker quarterback, a dual threat, if there was ever a dual threat, will get better throwing the ball. If they put the playmakers around him like it looks like they have, this team will be better. And look, that was as bad as you can maybe think by Oklahoma standards that they would be. And they fought through it. Brent Venables is in a make-or-break year. He went out and changed his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, one of the best young minds in college football. The last time they did that was a guy named Lincoln Riley. I think this is going to work out in a similar sense for Oklahoma. Sadly, for USC, that same thing hasn't quite worked out year over year with Lincoln Riley. But I think John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle will make a huge difference for the Sooners this year, and they win some ball games. And number 1, I mean, it's... And that DJ friggin' Lagway. They've got all these guys wanting to play there. Billy Napier was the worst coach in the SEC starting out last year. They couldn't get him out the door fast enough. Then idiots like me go on there and be like, hey, if he wants to keep his job, he should play DJ Lagway. Not that I'm saying that Billy Napier watches this show and says, you know what, I'm going to stick it to that fat a-hole. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of people like me that say, hey, listen, Graham Mertz, nothing against the guy. He's a trooper, but he's not a net positive. He's not a net negative. He's just there. He's a 0. He's not going to help you. He's not going to cause you to lose. He's also not going to help you to win. He's just there. He's just taking up space. DJ Lagway is a net positive, and it was proven. Once Graham Mertz got hurt, DJ Lagway made them better every single step of the way. He's a year older. They have better players around him. People are flooding into Gainesville for the first time since Urban Meyer left. And it's got me questioning everything about my faith and reality and all that. I mean, how did this happen? It's upsetting. I know that you don't like to see me in this condition. I'd like to see me in this condition. But as long as DJ Lagway's there, they're going to win ball games. He's a stud. The only solace I have is this gator that ate the clock and Captain Hook's hand. That's all I got. That's all I've got. That's all I've got to cling to is this little effeminate alligator. Right here. That's all I've got. But yes, Florida should be very, very good in 2025. Do not sleep on them at all. DJ Lagway is the truth. And the best news for all of us who are rivals of the Gators is that there's only 2 more years of this. So everything is temporary, even our pain. I was fine. I was doing well. I was thriving in the universe. And then DJ Lagway came along. But good luck to the Florida Gators in the spirit of sportsmanship in every single game but 2, when they play LSU and when they play FSU. If they're 10-2 and those are the 2 losses and they don't win the national title, I think I can get up in the morning and see the sunshine. If not, I'm going to start listening to The Cure a lot. That's going to do it for this episode of the show. Smokey, please get me off my rant.
Well, I'm not going to. I'm going to get worse. Robert Griffin III, who joined us on Friday's latest podcast, Out of Pocket, is on DJ Lagway.
I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah,
I really can't.
I will watch it because DJ Lagway is it. All right, Garrett, thank you very much for running the mothership. Emery Winters working on 365 Sports tonight, 10:30 tonight on the CW. Thank you watching us, however you do it, on YouTube, 365 Sports, or at 365 Sports YT on Twitter. For our sponsors, we appreciate all of you, all of them too. For Paul Catalina, DJ Lagway, Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Florida Gators rock. Good night on 365 Sports.